Hey everyone. Welcome back for the fifth and final part of What If Naruto Was Sasuke's Brother? As always, huge thanks to all of my Patreons. Making these videos would be impossible without you guys' support, especially with all the restrictions YouTube places on my type of content. After this video, feel free to head over there, where you can find about 50 other different stories to enjoy. Also, feel free to send me any messages over there if you have any questions or even if you just want to chat. Link to all of that will be in the description. Anyways, everyone, enjoy the video. Chapter 12. The two vials on the table seemed to absorb all the light in the study. They were a miracle and a desecration, a promise of eternal light and a burden of impossible weight. Naruto stared at them, his sage sense feeling the faint, dormant, and overwhelmingly familiar chakra of his birth father sealed within. He didn't feel triumph or relief. He felt a profound, aching sadness. This was the last physical remnant of Minato Namikaze, the hero who had saved the village. To take his eyes, to implant them into his own head. It felt like a violation. Like robbing a grave.
I can't, Naruto whispered, the words tasting like ash.
He pushed himself away from the table. They're his. I can't take them. I'll find another way. Fugaku's expression was one of deep, sorrowful understanding. He had expected this. Naruto's heart, for all the power he wielded, was still fundamentally good. There is no other way, Naruto. The curse of the Mangekyo is absolute. I don't care, Naruto said, his voice gaining a stubborn edge. He stood up, unable to look at the vials any longer. I made my choice when I used them. I'll live with the consequences. I won't desecrate his memory. He turned and left the study, leaving Fugaku alone with the ghost of the fourth Hokage. Fugaku let out a long, slow sigh and carefully closed the box, the heavy decision postponed, but not resolved. The next few days were quiet. Naruto didn't speak of the eyes again. He spent his time in a state of quiet contemplation. He walked through the village, a black blindfold now a common accessory when he was not on official duty. He listened to the sounds of life, the chatter of the marketplace, the laughter of children at the academy, the endless, energetic arguments between his friends at the Yamanaka flower shop. He stood before the memorial stone, his hand tracing the familiar, sharp characters of the third Hokage's name. He felt the life force of the village, a vibrant, thriving ecosystem of hope and dreams that he had fought and bled to protect. His blindness, his curse. It was a small price to pay for all of this. He reaffirmed his choice. He would endure it. In a windswept canyon on the border of the land of sound, Sasuke Uchiha stood calmly, his kusanagi blade dripping crimson onto the dusty ground. Around him lay the bodies of the Hebetsukai clan. It was not a battle, it was an extermination. This was his new reality. Hunting Orochimaru's rivals, eliminating threats to the Sanin's power, all under the guise of his top-secret infiltration mission for Konoha. He was becoming a monster to fight monsters. Every victory for Orochimaru was a step closer to his own goals. It was a dark, bloody calculus, but one he had long since accepted. In a rain-swept tower somewhere in Amigakure, Itachi Uchiha stood beside his partner, Kisame Hoshigaki, as Pain addressed the remaining members. The Nine Tails is too powerful for a direct assault, Pain stated, his rinnegan glowing. His connection to the village is his greatest defense. We must find a way to sever it. Itachi met his leader's gaze without flinching. His bonds are his strength, Itachi said, his voice a calm monotone. Particularly to the last of his clan. If one were to threaten his family, he would be forced to leave the village's protection. It was a perfect piece of misdirection, a seed of a plan so heinous Pain would consider it, buying Itachi precious time. It was a delicate, dangerous game of chess, and Itachi was playing for the highest stakes imaginable. Back in Konoha, the quiet days came to an abrupt end. Naruto was meditating when he felt it, a single, agonizing spike of pain and terror from the direction of the main gate. He was gone in a golden flash. He reappeared on a rooftop overlooking a scene of utter chaos. A section of the village wall was gone. In the center of the crater stood Hidan and Kakuzu. Before them, bleeding on the ground, was Asuma Sarutobi. Hidan stood within a ritualistic circle drawn in blood, a cruel, ecstatic grin on his face as he raised a black spike, ready to pierce his own heart and end Asuma's life. Kurenai and Shikamaru were there, frozen in horror, unable to break through Kakuzu's defense. Naruto's world went cold. He didn't just see the scene with his illusory eyes, his sage sense felt the link, the curse that tied Asuma's life to the man in the circle. And he saw his path to breaking it. Naruto's voice was a low, terrifying growl that cut through the Akatsuki's chatter. He entered Fox Sage mode in an instant. Before Hidan could even register the new presence, A tri-pronged kunai whistled through the air and embedded itself in the ground right beside Asuma. Flash! Naruto appeared, grabbed the stunned and bleeding Jonin, and flashed again, reappearing on the rooftop beside a sobbing Kurenai 100 yards away. It took less than half a second. Hidan, who had just been about to impale himself, looked up to find his ritual circle empty, the connection to his victim severed. What the? Where did he go? The Jashinist shrieked in fury. Looking for him? Naruto's voice came from the center of the crater. He stood alone now, his sage-marked eyes burning with a cold, murderous light. He held a swirling vortex of wind chakra in his hand, not a Rasengan, but something new, something terrible. Wind style, Rasen Shuriken. The sound was a deafening shriek that tore at the very air as four massive, windmill-like blades of pure wind erupted from the core of the sphere. Hidan, in his rage, charged blindly. Naruto met him head-on. The immortal cultist's eyes widened in shock as he was consumed by a colossal, raging dome of wind. A storm of a million microscopic chakra blades shredded him on a cellular level. When the vortex cleared, Hidan was gone, reduced to scattered, twitching, and utterly neutralized pieces. Kakuzu stared, his stitched mouth agape. That jutsu. It is forbidden for a reason. His body contorted, black threads erupting from his back as four masked monsters separated from his body, each representing one of his stolen hearts. You will pay for that, boy. What followed was a slaughter. A dozen sage-enhanced clones erupted around the battlefield. One clone engaged the fire-masked beast, overwhelming its attacks with a massive Rasengan. Another used the Hiraishin to appear behind the wind-masked beast, shattering its core with a sage-infused punch. The real Naruto was a golden phantom, his speed and precognition making Kakuzu's thread-based attacks look laughably slow. He flowed through the battlefield, a force of nature, his claws tearing through the Earth-style heart's defense and his guided Rasengan obliterating the lightning heart from a distance. Finally, he stood before the last, terrified core still attached to Kakuzu's back. Monster! Kakuzu rasped, his centuries of life flashing before his eyes. Naruto's face was a mask of cold fury. He formed a final Rasengan and drove it into the bounty hunter's chest, ending his long, greedy life in a single, silent, devastating impact. The battle was over. Naruto stood panting in the crater, the last of his sage mode receding. He looked over at the rooftop, at his friends tending to a wounded but alive Asuma Sarutobi. He had done it. He had saved them. But the cost of this fight, the sheer, overwhelming power of the enemies at their gate, had made one thing terrifyingly clear. His current strength, his fading light, was not enough. He walked back to his father's study that night, his steps heavy with a new, grim resolve. Fugaku was waiting, the box with the two glass vials already resting on the table. Naruto sat down, his face a mask of stone. He looked at the last remnant of his birth father, and then at the blurry, indistinct shape of the man who had raised him. The single, resolute statement, "I'll do it," hung in the air, heavy with the weight of sacrifice. Fugaku's stony expression softened, a flicker of sorrow and pride in his dark eyes. He gave a single, slow nod. "Very well," he said, his voice a low rumble. "The preparations must be made. This is a procedure that can only be performed by one person." The next morning, Naruto and Fugaku stood in the Hokage's office. The air was thick with a tension that had nothing to do with war or politics. On Tsunade's desk, nestled on a bed of black silk, sat the two vials containing Minato's eyes. Tsunade stared at them, her expression a mixture of a doctor's clinical fascination and a leader's grim understanding. "The eternal Mangekyo Sharingan," she breathed, her voice filled with awe. "It is a legend. A myth. I have only ever read about the theory." She looked at Naruto, her gaze sharp and serious. "You understand what you are asking, Naruto? This isn't like setting a broken bone. This is transplanting a piece of a soul. The chakra pathways of two of the most powerful shinobi in history must be woven together. If I make a single mistake, a microscopic error in the connection, it could leave you permanently blind, or worse." "I understand," Naruto said, his voice calm. He turned his head toward the window, at the hazy, indistinct shape of the Hokage monument. "I cannot protect this village if I cannot see the threats coming for it. This is the only way." Tsunade looked from his unwavering resolve to Fugaku's silent, stoic support. Her decision was made. The procedure will take place tonight. In a secure, hidden location. No one can know of this. The world believes your eyes are fine. They must continue to believe that, until the time is right. The location was a hidden medical facility deep beneath the Naka Shrine, a place known only to the Uchiha clan head and now, the Hokage. It was a sterile, modern operating theater hidden within the ancient stone. Naruto lay on the operating table, his mother, Mikado, holding his hand, her face a mask of love and fear. Fugaku stood like a stone sentinel in the corner. Shizune, Tsunade's most trusted apprentice, prepared the instruments. Tsunade stood over Naruto, her hands already glowing with a brilliant, impossibly complex aura of green chakra. "Are you ready?" she asked, her voice soft. Naruto gave a single nod. He closed his eyes for the last time on a world of blurs and shadows. The procedure began. It was not a surgery of scalpels and sutures, but of pure, masterful chakra control. Tsunade's hands became instruments of impossible precision. She made no incisions. Her chakra, refined into a blade finer than any steel, separated the dead and dying cells of Naruto's optic nerves. She gently removed his clouded eyes, placing them in a preservation unit. Then, she took the vials. With a surgeon's care, she placed Minato Namikaze's eyes into Naruto's empty sockets. This was the critical moment. Her chakra flared, weaving a luminous, intricate tapestry of green light. She was not just connecting nerves and blood vessels, she was merging the chakra networks. She took the Uchiha pathways, the pathways of the Mangekyo, and wove them into the Uzumaki Namikaze pathways of the new eyes. It was a fusion, a true synthesis of two legendary bloodlines. Hours passed. The only sound in the room was the soft hum of Tsunade's chakra and the steady beep of the monitors. Finally, with a last, delicate touch, she was done. The glow faded from her hands. She was pale, sweat beading on her forehead, the sheer concentration having taken a massive toll. She carefully wrapped Naruto's head in thick bandages. "It is done," she said, her voice heavy with exhaustion. "Now. We wait." Naruto woke to darkness. But it was a different kind of darkness. It wasn't the frustrating, hazy gray of his blindness. It was the simple, peaceful dark of a bandage over his eyes. He could feel it. A new warmth, a new energy, a profound wholeness that had been absent for so long. His family and Tsunade were at his bedside in an instant. "How do you feel?" Mikado asked, her voice trembling with hope. "I feel." Naruto started, his voice rough. "Different." Slowly, with his own hands, he began to unwind the bandages. The final layer fell away. He blinked. The world was not just clear. It was a symphony. He looked up at his mother's face, and for the first time, he truly saw the lines of worry and love etched around her eyes. He saw the individual gray hairs at his father's temples. He saw the microscopic scratches on Tsunade's Hokage necklace. The world was impossibly, painfully, beautifully sharp. The pain behind his eyes was gone. The strain was gone. He closed his eyes and opened them again, activating his new power. The transformation was instantaneous. His eyes blazed with a crimson light, and the familiar, three-bladed pinwheel of his Mangekyo spun to life. But it was different. Woven into its design, in the negative space between the blades, was a new pattern, a faint, spiky sunburst, a subtle echo of the fourth Hokage's own iconic hair. It was the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. A perfect fusion of Uchiha and Namikaze. He looked around the room, and he didn't just see chakra. He saw life. He saw the world through the combined legacy of two fathers. A single tear, clear and bright, traced a path down his cheek. He was whole again. And he was ready for the war that was still waiting in the shadows. The week that followed was one of quiet, intense recalibration. The world, once a frustrating blur or a chaotic storm of sensory data, was now a perfect, high-definition symphony. Naruto spent hours in the Uchiha training grounds, not just training, but simply seeing. He stood with his father, Fugaku, their matching Mangekyo Sharingan spinning in perfect synchrony, Fugaku's three-bladed pinwheel a symbol of pure Uchiha power, and Naruto's a new, unique fusion of that design with the sunburst pattern of his birth father's legacy. "Throw it," Naruto said, his voice calm. Fugaku didn't hesitate. He unleashed a volley of 100 shuriken, each one expertly curved to strike from a different, unpredictable angle. To a normal shinobi, it would have been an inescapable storm of steel. To Naruto, it was a beautiful, complex equation playing out in slow motion. He didn't dodge. He moved through the storm, his hands a blur, plucking each weapon from the air with an impossible, fluid grace. He ended the barrage standing in the exact same spot, holding a bristling bouquet of shuriken in his hands. There was no strain. No pain. No hint of the bleeding or blindness that had once been the price for this power. There was only clarity. "The fusion is perfect," Fugaku stated, a profound, unshakable pride in his voice. "You have surpassed the curse of our clan, Naruto. You have created something new." Naruto just smiled, looking at his own hands, then up at the impossibly detailed leaves on the trees. He could see the veins in each leaf, the path of a single ant crawling on a branch 100 yards away. He was no longer just perceiving the world through his sage sense, he was truly seeing it, with a depth and clarity that was almost spiritual. That evening, the Uchiha household felt a peace it had not known in years. Naruto sat on the Ingawa with his mother, simply watching the sunset, describing the vibrant colors to her in a way he never could before. Mikoto listened, tears of quiet joy in her eyes. Her son had his light back. The peace, as always, was temporary. The summons from the Hokage came the next morning. When Naruto entered the office, Tsunade, Jiraiya, and Fugaku were already there, standing around a large map. The atmosphere was grim. "We have a problem," Tsunade said, skipping the pleasantries. She pointed to a location deep within the land of rivers. Jiraiya's spy network has picked up whispers. A potential Akatsuki hideout. The intel suggests it's a collection point, a place they use to coordinate and resupply. Hidan and Kakuzu were just the tip of the spear, Jiraiya added, his expression serious. Pain won't be deterred by their loss. He'll simply adapt. He will see your victory not as a deterrent, but as a confirmation that you are the single greatest threat to his plans. He will come for you again, Naruto. Then we don't wait for him to come to us, Naruto said, his voice a low, steady thing. We go to them. We start hunting. Tsunade's lips curved into a grim smile. Exactly. But you're not going alone this time. Your last 2 solo missions ended in victories that nearly cost you everything. This is not a mission for a sledgehammer. It's a mission for scalpels. She made a hand sign, and 2 figures dropped silently from the ceiling, kneeling before her desk. They were Anbu, clad in the standard gray flak jackets and porcelain animal masks. Your team for this mission will be a specialized 3-man cell, Tsunade explained. Sakura will be your medical support. She has become one of the finest medics in this village, and her skills will be invaluable. One of the Anbu operatives removed her mask, revealing Sakura's determined, pink-haired visage. She gave Naruto a sharp, professional nod. Your third, Tsunade continued, will be our finest tracker. The second Anbu removed his mask. He was a Hyuga, his pale, pupilless eyes holding the calm, analytical gaze of a seasoned veteran. His hair was long and black, tied back in a simple ponytail. Kenji Hyuga, the man introduced himself, his voice a calm baritone. It is an honor, Naruto-sama. The honorific was not one of admiration, but of simple, professional respect for Naruto's established rank and power. Naruto looked at his new team. A medic who could shatter the earth, and a Hyuga whose Byakugan could see for miles. A perfect support unit. Your mission, Tsunade said, her voice dropping, is reconnaissance in force. Infiltrate the land of rivers, locate the suspected hideout, and assess the enemy's strength. Do not engage the entire organization. Your primary objective is intelligence. Your secondary objective, her eyes hardened, is to eliminate any Akatsuki members you can isolate. We are no longer defending, Naruto. We are sending a message. We are cutting the head off the snake, one piece at a time. Naruto looked at his new team, then back at his Hokage. He placed a hand on the hilt of the new, perfectly balanced katana Fugaku had gifted him. A new war had just begun. A war fought in the shadows. Understood, Naruto said, a new, cold fire in his eternal Mangekyo. Let the hunt begin. Deep within a subterranean lair, the air was cold and stale. Orochimaru watched Sasuke, his prize, his perfect vessel, his greatest student. The boy was a weapon of terrifying beauty. But the Sanin's own body was failing. The rejection of the last transfer was accelerating, his borrowed form beginning to decay. It was time. He found Sasuke meditating in the quiet of his personal quarters. Sasuke-kun, Orochimaru hissed, his voice a dry rasp. Your training is complete. You have surpassed me in many ways. It is time for you to grant me my final desire. It is time for you to give me your body. Sasuke's eyes snapped open, his 3 Tomoe Sharingan already spinning. He had been waiting for this. He had felt his master's desperation growing for weeks. I have no intention of giving you anything, Sasuke said, his voice as cold as the stone around them. Except a grave. Orochimaru laughed, a wet, gurgling sound. Such defiance. I love it. His body contorted, and he lunged, his true form, a colossal, grotesque white serpent composed of hundreds of smaller snakes, erupting from the shell of his human host. This was his ultimate jutsu, the technique of immortality. He would swallow the boy whole, absorb his consciousness, and take his flesh and his eyes for himself. Sasuke didn't flinch. He let the serpent come. He let its massive jaws open, ready to consume him. This was the weakness he had been waiting for, the moment of absolute commitment. As the fangs descended, Sasuke's body exploded in an untamed, violent torrent of lightning. Chidori Nagashi. It was not a spear or a blade, it was a storm. A 30-foot dome of pure, crackling lightning erupted from Sasuke's body, a perfect, inescapable defense and a devastating counterattack. The great white serpent, a being of flesh and chakra, was engulfed in the storm. It roared, not in triumph, but in agony, its spiritual form seared and scrambled by the raw, untamed lightning. When the light faded, the great serpent was gone. All that remained on the floor was a single, small, terrified white snake, writhing in pain. Orochimaru's true, pathetic form. Sasuke stood over it, his kusanagi blade in his hand, his expression one of cold, final pity. "You sought immortality," Sasuke said. "But you only found a cage." With a single, swift, and merciless strike, he pinned the snake to the floor, ending the legend of the Sannin Orochimaru. His mission was complete. He walked through the silent lair, gathering every scroll, every piece of intel on the Akatsuki, every dark secret Orochimaru had collected. He sealed them away. Then, he turned and began the long walk home. The alarm at Konoha's main gate was a frantic, piercing shriek. A dozen Chunin guards stood with kunai drawn, their faces pale. Before them, leaning casually against the gatepost as if he had just returned from a stroll, was Sasuke Uchiha. "The traitor has returned." One of the guards yelled into his comm unit. "All units converge on the main gate. He's an S-rank threat." Before they could attack, Sasuke vanished in a blur of motion, too fast for any of them to track. He reappeared in a swirl of leaves in the center of the Hokage's office. Tsunade was there, along with Jiraiya and his father. Their expressions were not of anger, but of a profound, weary relief. "The prodigal son returns," Jiraiya said, a slow grin spreading across his face. Sasuke ignored him, walking to the desk and placing a large, sealed scroll upon it. "Orochimaru is dead," he stated, his voice flat. "This is all of his intelligence on the Akatsuki and his other operations. My mission is complete." The door burst open, and a squad of Anbu landed in a defensive crouch around the Hokage. "Lady Tsunade." "He's here." Tsunade held up a hand. "Stand down," she commanded. The Anbu looked at her, then at Sasuke, then back at her, their confusion palpable. His defection was a lie. Sasuke Uchiha has been on a deep cover, SS-rank infiltration mission for the past 3 years, under my direct authority. His mission was to eliminate Orochimaru and gather intelligence on the Akatsuki. He has succeeded on all counts. She looked at Sasuke, her eyes filled with a new, profound respect. "Welcome home, Sasuke. You have served your village with honor." Sasuke gave a single, curt nod. He looked around the office, a single question in his eyes. "Where is he?" Fugaku's expression softened. "You just missed him, son. He left this morning on his own mission." He looked from his returned son to the map on the wall, a new, fierce hope dawning in his heart. The board was set. His 2 sons, his 2 greatest weapons, were now hunting the same shadows from 2 different directions. The fight for their future was about to begin in earnest. The Hokage's office was a whirlwind of activity. The news of Sasuke Uchiha's return, and the truth of his mission, sent shockwaves through the village's leadership. Anbu were dispatched, new security protocols were enacted based on the intel he'd brought, and a quiet, profound sense of victory settled over them. Orochimaru was gone. One of the great 3 threats to the village had been permanently erased from the board. But Sasuke heard none of it. He gave his full, formal report to his father and the Hokage, his voice a flat, clinical monotone as he detailed Orochimaru's networks, strengths, and the location of his hidden bases. When he was finished, he gave a curt bow. "I need to go home," was all he said. Fugaku nodded, a universe of understanding in his dark eyes. "Go, son. Your mother is waiting." The walk through the Uchiha compound was a surreal experience. It was the same path he had walked 1,000 times, but he was a different person. He had left as a boy driven by a desperate need for strength, he returned as a man who had stared into the abyss and had not flinched. He stopped before the door to his home, the simple wooden gate seeming like the final barrier between the soldier he had become and the son he had been. He took a deep breath and slid it open. The house was quiet. He could hear the soft clatter of dishes from the kitchen. He walked into the main room, and she was there. Mikoto Uchiha was arranging a single flower in a vase. She turned, a gentle, sad smile on her face, likely thinking it was Fugaku returning early. Her eyes met his. The vase slipped from her fingers, shattering on the floor in a spray of water and ceramic shards. She didn't notice. Her hands flew to her mouth, and a sound, a choked, desperate sob of pure, unadulterated relief, broke the silence of the house. For 3 years, she had lived with the shame, the grief, the agonizing belief that her youngest son was a traitor, lost to the darkness. And now, he was here. Sasuke? She whispered, the name a prayer. He didn't speak. He just walked to her, and for the first time in years, the cold, emotionless mask of the infiltrator crumbled away, and he was just a boy, home from a war no one knew he had been fighting. He wrapped his arms around her, burying his face in her shoulder as her own arms enveloped him in a desperate, trembling hug. The silence was broken by the sound of a mother's quiet, joyful weeping. Fugaku arrived a few minutes later to find them sitting on the Ingawa, Mikoto still clutching her son's hand as if he might vanish at any moment. Sasuke was finally home. The Uchiha clan, what was left of it, was whole again. Miles away, in the dense, perpetually damp forests of the Land of Rivers, the hunt had begun. Naruto's new team moved like ghosts through the canopy, a silent, three-pronged instrument of war. They were not the brash, powerful force Naruto had been on his own. They were scalpels, as Tsunade had ordered. Kenji Hyuga took the lead, his Byakugan a constant, sweeping presence. His vision was a 360-degree dome of perception that pierced through the dense foliage, identifying every animal, every traveler, every flicker of chakra for 10 kilometers in every direction. 2 travelers on the main road, 5 clicks east. Civilian signatures, his voice was a low, professional murmur in their shared comm unit. Nothing else. The area is clean. Sakura moved in the center, her role that of the analyst. She would occasionally drop to the forest floor, her hands pressed against the damp earth. The ground here is disturbed, she'd report, her medical ninjutsu allowing her to read the life signs in the soil. A large group passed this way within the last 48 hours. 10, maybe 12 individuals. Their chakra residue is faint, but it's there. And it feels wrong. Cold. Naruto was their anchor and their weapon. His passive sage sense was a different kind of sensorium. He didn't just see chakra, he felt its intent. While Kenji's Byakugan was a radar, Naruto's sense was a sonar, feeling the emotional resonance of the landscape. The coldness Sakura felt in the chakra residue, he could taste. It was the metallic tang of bloodlust, the hollow void of beings who were no longer truly human. This is the place, Naruto said finally, his voice low. They had been tracking the cold trail for a full day. He held up a hand, bringing the team to a halt. They crouched on a high branch overlooking a deep, mist-shrouded gorge. A massive waterfall crashed into the chasm below, its roar a constant, deafening presence. Kenji, what do you see? Naruto asked. The Hyuga's eyes narrowed, veins bulging at his temples as he focused his vision. There is a cave system hidden behind the waterfall. The entrance is masked by a powerful genjutsu-based seal. But there's more. The entire gorge is a network of traps. Explosive tags, chakra-draining barriers, pressure-sensitive seals. It's a fortress. Can you see inside? Sakura asked. Kenji shook his head. The rock is too dense, and it's lined with a chakra-disrupting mineral. My Byakugan is blind past the entrance. Naruto closed his own eyes, casting his sage sense toward the waterfall. He felt it, too. A deep, hollow wrongness. A place where life did not go. But he could feel no distinct signatures, no heartbeats, no active chakra. It's empty, Naruto said, a frown on his face. Or dormant. Our orders are to assess their strength, Sakura reminded him, her voice steady. We can't do that from out here. Naruto looked at his team. The medic, the tracker, the weapon. Tsunade had given him the perfect tools for this job. All right, he said, a plan forming in his mind, his eternal mangekyo spinning to life. Here's how we're going to break into a fortress without them ever knowing we were there. All right, Naruto's voice was a low, confident murmur that cut through the roar of the waterfall. Here's how we're going to break into a fortress without them ever knowing we were there. He looked at his team, his eternal mangekyo spinning with a calm, analytical light. The plan was audacious, a high-wire act of infiltration that relied on a perfect synergy of their unique skills. Kenji, you're our guide. Get us to the base of that waterfall without setting off a single tripwire. I don't want them to know we're even in the country. The Hyuga gave a sharp, confident nod, his Byakugan already active. Consider it done. Sakura, Naruto continued, turning to her. Your job is the hardest. I need you to use your chakra control to create a suppression field around the 3 of us. It needs to be perfect. Dampen our sound, mask our heat signatures, and, most importantly, completely smother our chakra. We need to be ghosts. Sakura's expression was one of fierce concentration. I can do it. And what is your role, Naruto-sama? Kenji asked, his tone one of professional curiosity. A slow, dangerous grin spread across Naruto's face. I'm the key. They descended into the gorge, moving with a supernatural silence. Kenji was a master, his hand signals guiding them on a complex, weaving path that bypassed every hidden trap. Sakura was a prodigy of control, a faint, almost invisible aura of her green chakra enveloping them, making them utterly undetectable to conventional senses. They were three phantoms, moving through a sleeping fortress. They arrived at the base of the waterfall, the sheer rock face slick with mist, the roar of the water a deafening wall of sound. Kenji pointed to a specific spot, a section of blank rock. The seal is there. The genjutsu is powerful. It's designed to repel anyone who tries to analyze it. We're not analyzing it, Naruto said. And we're not going through it. He stepped forward, his mangekyo locking onto the rock face. We're going around it. He focused his right eye, and the world seemed to twist. The very fabric of space in front of him shimmered, warping into a swirling, black vortex. It was Kamui. A spatial jutsu that connected his world to a pocket dimension of his own making. Stay close, he commanded. He stepped into the vortex, and for a dizzying, disorienting second, they were in a void, a silent, gray world of floating, crystalline blocks. Then, with another step, they emerged. The roar of the waterfall returned, but now it was behind them. They were inside the cave, having bypassed the sealed entrance entirely. The air in the Akatsuki hideout was cold, stale, and smelled of antiseptic and old stone. The tunnel they were in opened into a vast, central cavern. In the center was a large, circular platform, and above it, a colossal, grotesque statue with 10 closed eyes loomed in the darkness. The ghetto statue. Naruto's sage sense felt the faint, terrifying echo of Baijuu chakra emanating from it, and a cold dread settled in his gut. This is their headquarters, Sakura whispered, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and awe. No living signatures, Kenji reported, his Byakugan sweeping the area. The place is dormant. Then let's not waste the opportunity, Naruto said. Split up. Gather any intel you can find. Scrolls, maps, mission rosters. We have 30 minutes. The cavern was a hub, with multiple tunnels branching off. They each took a path. The rooms they found were Spartan, almost monastic. Each one contained a simple bed, a desk, and a few personal effects. It was in a room filled with clay and explosive tags, datara, that Sakura hit the jackpot. Hidden in a false bottom of a chest, she found a ledger. It wasn't just a mission roster, it was a bingo book. Their bingo book. It had detailed profiles on every known Jinchuriki, their villages, their protectors, and their predicted movements. Kenji, in a room that smelled of oil and preservatives, found maps. Not of nations, but of ancient ruins, temples, and shrines, places of immense spiritual power, likely the locations for their sealing rituals. Naruto, however, was drawn to a specific tunnel. His sage sense felt a lingering trace of chakra, a whisper of a presence that was both familiar and deeply unsettling. He entered a room that was starker than the others, almost empty, save for a single, perfectly made bed. On the wall, pinned by a kunai, was a tattered piece of paper. A child's drawing. It depicted 3 stick figures under a smiling sun, a small blonde boy, a small black-haired boy, and a taller figure with a kind smile. Itachi's room. The lingering chakra was his. And the drawing. It was the one Sasuke had made for their older brother years ago, a gift Itachi had apparently kept through all his years as a traitor. The sight of it was a physical blow, a complex, painful confirmation that the brother he had loved was still in there, buried beneath the person he had become. A sudden, sharp hiss from his calm unit shattered the moment. Naruto. We have a problem. Kenji's voice was a low, urgent whisper. There's a chakra signature in the main cavern. It wasn't there a second ago. It just grew out of the floor. Naruto's head snapped up, his mangekyo blazing. He was at the main cavern in a golden flash, appearing beside his 2 teammates, who were in a defensive stance. Standing on the central platform, seemingly having emerged from the stone itself, was a figure that was more plant than man. One half of his body was black, the other a stark, swirling white. A massive, Venus flytrap-like appendage encased his head, and a single, yellow, inhuman eye stared at them. Well, the white half's voice was cheerful and high-pitched. Look what we have here. Little rats, scurrying through our empty little nest. They bypassed the seals. The black half's voice was a deep, guttural rasp. The Uchiha. He must have used a space-time jutsu. Zetsu. Our orders were to observe, Naruto stated, his voice a low command to his team. And our orders were to hunt, a new, chillingly familiar voice echoed from the tunnel Itachi's room was in. A figure stepped out of the shadows. He wore the red clouded cloak of the Akatsuki, and his face was a mask of cold indifference. Itachi Uchiha. But he wasn't alone. Another figure emerged beside him, a hulking giant with blue skin, gills, and a massive, bandaged sword strapped to his back. Kisame Hoshigaki. It seems the rats have walked into the lion's den, Kisame grinned, his shark-like teeth glinting. The hideout wasn't empty. It was a trap. The air in the cavern, already cold, dropped to a near freezing temperature. The combined killing intent of 3 S-rank criminals was a physical weight, a suffocating pressure that made the very stones seem to groan. Naruto's team didn't flinch. Kenji's Byakugan was already active, his gaze flicking between the 3 opponents, analyzing their chakra systems. Sakura settled into a low stance, her hands glowing with a faint green light, ready to shatter the earth or heal an ally at a moment's notice. Naruto's gaze, however, was locked on only one person. Itachi. His brother's face was a mask of cold, perfect indifference. The Mangekyo Sharingan spun lazily in his eyes, a familiar, painful sight. But behind the mask, Naruto's own eternal Mangekyo saw the truth. He saw the microscopic tension in Itachi's jaw, the almost imperceptible shift in his chakra, a coiled, waiting spring. This wasn't a random encounter. Itachi had known he was coming. So, you found my little gift. Itachi's voice was a calm, dispassionate monotone. I must admit, I am surprised you made it this far, little brother. The mission was intel. Naruto's voice was a low command, not to Itachi, but to his team. We have it. Time to go. He threw a Hiraishin kunai towards the Kamui vortex he had left open at the cave's entrance, a shimmering, black portal that was their only escape route. Kisame's grin widened, showing off a row of razor-sharp teeth. Go? But the party is just getting started. He swung his massive, bandaged blade, Seimata, from his back. Water style, exploding water colliding wave. He didn't just spit out water, he vomited a literal ocean into the cavern. A colossal, churning tidal wave erupted from his mouth, threatening to smash them against the far wall and drown them in an instant. Naruto didn't even turn. Sakura. On it, Sakura roared. She slammed both fists into the stone floor. It wasn't a simple punch, it was a focused explosion of her monstrous, Tsunade-taught strength. The entire central platform of the cavern shattered, a spiderweb of cracks racing outwards as she created a massive chasm for the water to drain into. The tidal wave crashed and fell away into the depths, its power neutralized by raw, brute force. While the water was still draining, Zetsu sank into the floor, his plant-like body phasing through the solid stone. I'll cut off their escape. The black half rasped. I don't think so. Kenji's voice was a calm assertion. He blurred through a series of hand signs. Gentle fist art, body blow. He struck the stone floor where Zetsu had submerged. The attack didn't crack the rock, it sent a deep, resonating pulse of pure chakra through it. A muffled grunt came from deep within the stone as Zetsu's ethereal form was forcibly repelled, the gentle fist disrupting his chakra and preventing him from phasing. Kisame's eyes widened slightly in surprise. These weren't ordinary ninja. In that single, chaotic moment, Itachi moved. He was a phantom, appearing directly in front of Naruto, his hand already extended not in a strike, but in a test. Naruto met it, their forearms slapping together, a silent, high-speed exchange of taijutsu beginning between them. It was a deadly, intricate dance, their Sharingan eyes locked, predicting and countering every move before it was even made. Sakura, Kenji. Get the intel back to the village, Naruto commanded, his voice strained as he parried a lightning-fast kick. That's the primary objective. And leave you here alone? Sakura shouted back, her knuckles white. That's an order. Naruto grunted, ducking under a swipe that would have taken his head off. Go. Now. Kisame let out a booming laugh. Your little friends aren't going anywhere. He charged, Seimata held high, ready to cleave Sakura in two. He was intercepted by a wall of crimson, skeletal ribs. The first stage of Naruto's Susanoo flared to life, protecting his teammates. Kisame's blade scraped against the ethereal bone with a sound like grinding soles. Get out of here, Naruto roared. Sakura and Kenji exchanged a look. They were shinobi. An order was an order. With a final, worried glance, they leapt towards the Kamui vortex. Kisame tried to follow, but a colossal, spectral arm of the Susanoo slammed down, blocking his path. With their escape secured, the vortex swirled and snapped shut, leaving Naruto alone in the cavern with 3 of the world's most dangerous criminals. The Susanoo dissolved, and Naruto stood panting, his gaze never leaving his brother's. A foolish, sentimental choice, Itachi commented, his voice flat. That's the difference between you and me, brother, Naruto replied, a slow, dangerous grin spreading across his face. You threw away your comrades. I protect mine. He closed his eyes. The world of sight vanished, replaced by the vibrant, humming world of nature energy. The red pigmentation of fox sage mode flowed over his eyelids. He opened them, his eyes now a brilliant gold with slitted pupils. He could feel it all now. Kisame's chakra, a vast, hungry ocean. Zetsu's, a bizarre, parasitic presence. And Itachi's. Itachi's was a storm. A raging inferno of power, but beneath it, a current of profound, soul-crushing sadness and an unwavering, burning resolve. He was not fighting to kill. He was fighting to test. All right then, Naruto whispered, his voice resonating with sage energy. Let's see what I've learned. He vanished. Kisame, who had been ready for another charge, found himself swinging at empty air. Naruto appeared behind him, his hand wreathed in the silver claws of a sage, and delivered a single, devastating blow to the back of Kisame's neck. The swordsman was sent stumbling, a grunt of genuine pain escaping his lips. Seimata roared, its scales bristling, but its master was momentarily stunned. Itachi's Mangekyo spun, and he cast a genjutsu, a subtle illusion designed to trap Naruto in a world of falling crows. But Naruto didn't even see it. He felt the alien chakra try to invade his senses and, with a simple pulse of his own nature-infused energy, shattered it before it could even take root. Itachi's eyes widened almost imperceptibly. He broke that Tsukiyomi. Without even looking at me? Genjutsu doesn't work on a sage, Itachi, Naruto said, his voice echoing from all corners of the cavern at once as he moved at speeds they could no longer track. I'm not fighting what I see. I'm fighting what I feel. And I can feel everything. Kisame and Zetsu, realizing they were completely outclassed, looked to Itachi for orders. They had come to capture the Jinchuriki, but it was clear that the Jinchuriki was hunting them. Itachi stared at the golden blur that was his younger brother. He had seen enough. The power, the control, the impossible speed. Naruto was no longer a child to be protected. He was a peer. A rival. And his mission, the dark path he had chosen to walk, was not yet over. This was not the time for their final confrontation. He gave a single, almost invisible nod. A signal to retreat. Naruto felt the shift in his brother's emotions, the decision being made. He could press the attack. He could probably capture Kisame, maybe even force Itachi into a corner. But he also felt the weight of his brother's purpose, the sense that there was a larger game being played, a truth he still didn't fully grasp. Forcing Itachi back now would be a victory, but it might ruin the chance to ever truly understand. He let them go. As Itachi and Kisame blurred towards the exit, and Zetsu melted into the wall, Naruto allowed a single, powerful Rasengan to slam into the cavern wall, causing a massive cave-in to block their path, a final, definitive statement. He stood alone in the now silent cavern, the last of his sage mode receding. He had his victory. He had the intel. But more than that, he had a confirmation. His brother was still in there. And he was waiting. The hunt was not over, it had just become infinitely more complicated. Naruto stood in the silence of the collapsed cavern for a long moment, the last traces of his sage mode receding. He had the intel, his team was safe, and he had looked his brother in the eye. It was a victory, but it felt hollow. He had come here to hunt, but had left with more questions than answers. He created a single clone to gather the intel scrolls his team had dropped, sealing them for transport. Then, instead of using the Hiraishin to flash back to Konoha, he made a different choice. He walked to the new, man-made exit of the cave and stepped out into the damp, misty air of the land of rivers. He closed his eyes, and the red pigmentation of fox sage mode flowed over his eyelids. The world bloomed into its vibrant, humming reality. He felt the life force of the forest around him, the flow of the river, the distant heartbeat of a deer. He wasn't in a rush. For the first time in a long time, he just wanted to enjoy the feeling of truly seeing the world. He began the long walk home. In the Hokage's office in Konoha, the atmosphere was thick with a tension that was both political and desperate. Lady Tsunade sat behind her desk, her fingers steepled, her expression a mask of stern neutrality. Before her stood a delegation that would have been unthinkable just a few years prior. Mei Terumi, the leader of the rebellion against the fourth Mizukage's bloody reign, stood tall and proud, though the exhaustion of a prolonged civil war was evident in her eyes. Beside her was Ao, the veteran hunter nin whose right eye, covered by a special talisman, held a stolen Byakugan. And flanking them, a sight that made Tsunade's eyebrow twitch, were Zabuza Momochi, the demon of the hidden mist, and his loyal apprentice, Haku Yuki. They were no longer rogue ninja, but key commanders in Mei's rebel army. The situation in the land of water is dire, Lady Hokage, Mei said, her voice a smooth, calm thing that did little to hide the urgency beneath. The 4th Mizukage's forces are entrenched. The civil war has reached a stalemate, and our people are bleeding. We have come to formally request Konoha's aid. Tsunade's gaze was hard. An internal matter of the Mist Village is not Konoha's concern. Our own forces are stretched thin from the recent war. It is no longer just an internal matter, Zabuza's low, gravelly voice cut in. We have confirmed that the 4th Mizukage, Yagura, is being controlled. The Akatsuki have their claws in him. This is their war as much as it is ours. The name Akatsuki changed the temperature in the room. Mei had been hesitant to make this plea. She had seen the propaganda film that had shaken the world, the golden god of Konoha, a single boy who commanded a demon and dismantled armies. To ask such a monster for help felt like trading one tyrant for another. But Zabuza had insisted. He had told her of the boy he met in the land of Wave, a child who spoke of dreams and camaraderie even as he defeated a legend. He had assured her that beneath the god, there was a man. It was their last hope. Before Tsunade could respond, the air in her office shimmered and twisted. A swirling black vortex, the signature of Kamui, opened in the center of the room, and 2 figures stumbled out, Sakura and Kenji Hyuga. They looked frantic, their faces pale with terror. Lady Hokage, Sakura cried out, her professional calm shattered. We have the intel, but it was a trap. Naruto is alone. He's facing Itachi Uchiha, Kisame Hoshigaki, and another Akatsuki member. You have to send backup. The Kiri delegation stared in shock. The boy they had just been discussing was, at this very moment, facing 3 of the most dangerous criminals in the world by himself. Tsunade, however, didn't flinch. She simply raised a hand, a gesture of absolute, unshakable calm. Sakura, Kenji, breathe. Your primary mission was to secure that intelligence. You have succeeded. Well done. But Naruto. Kenji protested. Naruto will be fine, Tsunade stated, her voice so certain it was a physical force. He knew the risks. He made a tactical decision. He'll be home soon enough. The sheer confidence in her voice was stunning. The Kiri shinobi looked at her, then at the 2 terrified members of Naruto's squad, and a new, profound understanding of the power they were dealing with began to dawn on them. Tsunade wasn't just a gambler, she was a woman who knew she was holding an unbeatable hand. She turned to an Anbu operative kneeling silently in the corner. Bring Sasuke Uchiha to me. Immediately. The Anbu vanished. Tsunade then looked back at Mei. It seems our interests have aligned. You need to end a war. I need to send a message to the Akatsuki. A few minutes later, Sasuke Uchiha appeared in the office. He took in the scene with a single, sweeping glance of his Sharingan, the frantic medics, the stunned Kiri delegation, and the calm, commanding presence of his Hokage. You sent for me, Hokage-sama? I have a new mission for you, Sasuke, Tsunade said. SS rank. You will go to the land of water. You will assist the rebel forces under the command of Mei Terumi. Your objective, end the civil war. By any means necessary. Sasuke's eyes narrowed, a flicker of cold fire in their depths. It was the kind of mission he craved, decisive, impactful, and dangerous. You will not go alone, Tsunade continued, a small, knowing smirk on her lips. I'm assigning you a partner. He can be a bit of a handful, but his power is undeniable. He should be arriving shortly. Sasuke didn't need to be told. A silent understanding passed between them. He gave a single, curt nod. Understood. An hour later, Naruto Uchiha strolled through the main gates of Konoha. The sun was warm on his face, and the sounds of his home village were a welcome symphony. He was still in his sage mode, not out of necessity, but simply because he could. The world felt vibrant, alive, and for the first time in a long time, peaceful. He took his time, his footsteps unhurried as he made his way towards the Hokage Tower, completely unaware of the new war he was about to be sent to win. The heavy office door slid open with a soft, almost soundless click. Every head in the room turned. Naruto Uchiha stood in the doorway, his white coat pristine, his sage-marked eyes a brilliant, calm gold. He took in the scene with a single, sweeping glance of his sensory perception, the weary but determined Kiri delegation, the frantic energy of his former teammates, the cold, coiled power of his brother, and the unshakable confidence of his Hokage. Sorry I'm late. The walk was nice. Mei Terumi's breath caught in her throat. This was him. The golden god from the propaganda films. But the figure before her was not the terrifying, armored demon of destruction she had witnessed in the projection. He was calm. He radiated a power that was as vast and serene as a deep ocean, a stark contrast to the violent, crackling energy she had expected. Zabuza's lips curved into a faint, almost imperceptible smirk. There he is, he thought. The boy from the bridge. Naruto's golden eyes swept the room and finally landed on Sasuke. For a long, silent moment, the two brothers just looked at each other. 3 years of separation, of fighting 2 different wars in 2 different worlds, melted away. The gap between them was still there, a chasm of power and experience, but the foundation of their brotherhood, the unbreakable bond forged in the Uchiha compound, was stronger than ever. Naruto's calm, sage-like expression broke, replaced by a wide, familiar, and utterly genuine grin. "You're back." Sasuke's cold, stoic mask cracked, a rare, small smirk touching his lips. "Someone had to come home and keep you out of trouble." It was a simple exchange, but for everyone in the room, it was a glimpse into a dynamic that had reshaped the world. Tsunade cleared her throat, a proud, almost maternal smile on her face. "Now that the introductions are over," she said, her voice all business. "Naruto, Sasuke. This is Mei Terumi, leader of the Kiri Rebellion, and her command staff. Their civil war against the 4th Mizukage has been compromised by the Akatsuki." She looked at the two brothers, her gaze as hard as steel. "Your mission is to go to the land of water. You will assist Meidono's forces and sever the Akatsuki's control over the Mizukage. You are to end this war. The fate of an entire nation rests on your shoulders. You will be operating as a 2-man cell. Konoha's 2 greatest weapons, deployed as one." Mei watched, fascinated. This was how Konoha conducted its foreign policy? By deploying 2 teenagers who spoke to each other like bickering siblings but commanded the power of gods? "A 2-man cell is all we'll need," Sasuke stated, his voice a cold, confident thing. He looked at Naruto. "The Mizukage won't know what hit him. First, we hit the Mizukage," Naruto added, his grin turning predatory. "Then, we find whoever's pulling his strings and hit them even harder." Their synergy was perfect, their confidence absolute. They weren't just brothers, they were 2 halves of a perfect weapon, and they both knew it. Tsunade nodded, a look of grim satisfaction on her face. "Good. You will be Konoha's official envoys. A symbol of our new alliance with the legitimate government of the Mist." She looked at Mei. "You have your aid, Meidono. They will be more than enough." Mei could only nod, a wave of profound, disbelieving relief washing over her. She had come here expecting to beg for an army. Instead, she was being given 2 miracles. "Gear up," Tsunade commanded the brothers. "You leave in 30 minutes." Naruto and Sasuke gave a single, synchronized nod and vanished in a swirl of leaves and a flash of gold, leaving a stunned silence in their wake. Zabuza let out a low, rough chuckle. "Well," he said to no one in particular. "This should be interesting." 30 minutes later, the 2 brothers stood at the main gate of Konoha. They traveled light. Sasuke had his kusanagi blade and a pack of scrolls. Naruto had a single pouch filled with his Hiraishin kunai. Waiting with them was the Kiri delegation, their own gear packed, their expressions a mixture of anticipation and awe. "Ready to finally go on a real mission together?" Naruto asked, stretching his arms over his head as he looked at Sasuke. "Just try to keep up, loser," Sasuke retorted, a familiar, competitive glint in his Sharingan eyes. Naruto just grinned and turned to the Kiri shinobi. "All right, everyone, stick close. We're going to be moving fast." Without another word, the combined group shot forward, leaving the gates of Konoha in a blur of motion. They moved with the speed and silence of true masters, 2 living legends and their new allies streaking across the continent, a silent promise of the storm that was about to break over the land of water. The journey was a relentless, high-speed trek through the dense forests of the land of fire. For the Kiri delegation, it was a humbling experience. They were all elite shinobi, veterans of a brutal civil war, yet keeping pace with the 2 Uchiha brothers was a struggle. The boys moved with an effortless, ground-eating lope that seemed to require no exertion at all, a testament to their monstrous stamina. Sasuke remained at the point, a silent, deadly shadow scouting ahead, his Sharingan occasionally flaring to life as he scanned their path. Naruto, however, dropped back, his sage mode a constant, passive hum beneath his skin. He fell into step beside Mei Terumi, who was flanked by a stoic Zabuza and a watchful Ao. "So," Naruto began, his voice a casual, disarming thing that was completely at odds with his legendary reputation. "You're all pretty quiet. Not big on road trip conversations?" Mei, who had been maintaining a professional, Focused silence, was taken aback. His sage sense had painted a perfect picture of her emotional state, a tightly coiled spring of anxiety, hope, and a deep-seated apprehension. He could feel the questions she was holding back. "We are on a critical mission, Naruto Dono," Ao said, his voice a formal, respectful rumble. "It is a time for vigilance, not chatter." "Relax, Ao-san," Naruto chuckled. "Vigilance is my specialty. But you can't fight a war if you're wound up tighter than a scroll seal." He turned his attention back to Mei, his golden sage eyes holding a friendly, knowing glint. "Especially you, Mei Dono. I can feel you thinking so hard you're about to give yourself a headache. Come on, spit it out. I don't bite hard." The last word was delivered with a roguish grin that made the beautiful woman's composure crack. A faint blush touched her cheeks. "It is a lot to process," she admitted, her voice losing some of its formal edge. "To see the subject of the world's most terrifying bedtime story in person. You are not what I expected." "And what did you expect?" Naruto asked, genuinely curious. "A monster," she said with blunt honesty. "A weapon. Someone like our Mizukage, who wields his power like a club to beat the world into submission." "Power isn't the goal, it's the tool," Naruto replied, his tone shifting, becoming serious. He looked ahead at Sasuke's back. "And it's a tool you use to protect your home. Your precious people. That's the only reason to have it. The Mizukage uses his to control people. My brother and I are here to give that control back to you." Zabuza, who had been silent, let out a rough, gravelly chuckle. "He means it, you know. The brat sounds like a fool, but he's the most dangerous kind of fool, an idealist with the power to back it up. He told me something similar once, a long time ago on a bridge." Mei looked from the stoic demon of the mist to the smiling young man beside her. The fear, the apprehension she had been harboring, began to melt away, replaced by a fragile, growing hope. She had not come to Konoha to recruit a monster. She had come to recruit a hero. And she had gotten two. Their relentless pace continued for another day, the lush green of the land of fire slowly giving way to the more humid, swampy terrain that bordered the land of water. As they made camp for the night, the professional distance the Kiri-nin had maintained began to thaw. Ao, the stoic veteran, found himself observing Sasuke. The boy was a study in lethal efficiency, his movements economical as he set up a perimeter of almost invisible tripwires. Ao recognized the work of a true prodigy, someone whose instincts had been honed by trials he couldn't begin to imagine. "Your brother," Ao said, his voice a low rumble as he approached Naruto, who was busy starting a small, smokeless fire. "He has the eyes of a man who has seen the abyss." Naruto's cheerful expression softened, a flicker of a deep, shared history in his gaze. "We both have," he said quietly. "We just learned to climb out of it in different ways." Later that night, as Haku helped prepare their rations, he watched Naruto with a quiet curiosity. "Zabuza-sama told me you spoke to him of precious people," Haku said, his voice soft. "It is a rare thing for a shinobi of your power to speak of such things." Naruto smiled, a genuine, warm expression. "It's the only thing worth fighting for, isn't it? Without people to protect, all the power in the world is just an empty room." As he spoke, he subtly wove a single, complex hand sign, a technique the third Hokage had taught him. A small, silent barrier of Fuinjutsu expanded from his position, completely enveloping their camp. It was a privacy seal, designed to block out any long-range sensory techniques or unwanted listeners. He felt the faint, parasitic presence of a Zetsu spore that had been tracking them wither and die as it was cut off from its network. They were being watched, just as he'd suspected. Now, they were in the dark. He looked over at Mei, who was watching him, a new question in her eyes. "You said the Mizukage is being controlled by the Akatsuki," Naruto said, his tone shifting back to business. "What have you observed? What are his patterns?" Mei took a deep breath, the commander taking over once more. "He is erratic. For weeks, he will be a reclusive, paranoid tyrant, issuing contradictory orders and executing anyone who questions him. His chakra feels wrong, twisted. Then, for a few days at a time, he will be lucid. The old Yagura we knew. He will seem confused, horrified by the things he has done. It is in these moments that we have made our greatest gains, as the loyalist forces fall into disarray." Naruto's sage sense latched onto a key detail. "A cycle," he mused. "Like a tide. The Akatsuki's control waxes and wanes." He looked at Sasuke, whose Sharingan was already active, analyzing the information. "A long-range genjutsu," Sasuke concluded, his voice sharp. "Powerful enough to control a perfect Jinchuriki, but it requires immense focus and chakra. The user can't maintain it indefinitely. They have to rest, breaking the connection and giving the Mizukage moments of clarity. A slow, predatory grin spread across Naruto's face. So our target isn't just the Mizukage. It's the puppet master hiding in the shadows, pulling his strings. He looked at Mei, his golden sage eyes shining with a brilliant, strategic light. When is the next time you expect him to be lucid? Based on the pattern, within the next 2 days, she replied, her eyes widening as she began to understand his line of thinking. Then that's when we'll strike, Naruto declared. We won't just be fighting the Mizukage's army. We'll be staging an intervention. And we're going to introduce ourselves to the Akatsuki member who thinks they can hide from me. The plan, as audacious as it was, settled over the small war council with a chilling sense of purpose. For the next 36 hours, they waited. The Kiri rebellion, a scattered network of guerrilla fighters, began to move under Mei's covert orders, their forces converging on the capital, creating diversions and preparing for the final, decisive coup. At the heart of it all, in their secluded, Fuinjutsu-protected camp, the two Uchiha brothers became a silent, focused whirlwind of preparation. They sparred, not with the fiery competition of their youth, but with the deadly precision of two perfectly matched weapons honing each other's edges. Sasuke's Chidori was a piercing spear, his Sharingan predicting Naruto's Hiraishin flashes before they even happened. Naruto's Sage Mode was a river of power, his movements flowing around Sasuke's rigid, perfect forms, his sensory perception a perfect counter to his brother's visual prowess. They were a symphony of tactical perfection, and the Kiri veterans could only watch in awe. On the second morning, the signal came. A messenger bird arrived, a single, coded message from Mei's spies within the Mizukage's palace. The tide is out. He's lucid, Mei confirmed, her voice tight with a mixture of hope and dread. He's dismissed his elite guard. He is alone in his throne room, in a state of confusion. This is our only chance. Then we don't waste it, Naruto said, his golden sage eyes already burning with a focused light. The infiltration of Kirigakure was a masterclass in stealth. Zabuza, in his element, led them through the city's ancient, mist-shrouded waterways, his silent killing technique rendering them ghosts to the loyalist patrols. They emerged in the heart of the city, at the base of the Mizukage's cylindrical tower, without a single alarm being raised. The throne room is at the top, Zabuza growled, pointing his chin upwards. The entire tower is a fortress. We'll provide a distraction at the main entrance. It will only buy you a few minutes. A few seconds is all we'll need, Sasuke said, his hand already on the hilt of his kusanagi. Naruto placed a hand on his brother's shoulder. We're not taking the stairs. He looked up, his Mangekyo Sharingan locking onto the highest window of the tower. He threw a single Hiraishin kunai, a golden flash that was lost in the swirling mist. With another flash, he and Sasuke were gone from the street and standing inside the opulent, empty throne room of the fourth Mizukage. The room was a mess, scrolls and maps scattered across the floor. In the center, a young man with a prominent scar under his left eye and long, grayish hair sat slumped on the throne. He looked not like a tyrant, but like a lost, terrified boy. Yagura Kuratachi. He looked up as they appeared, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and a dawning, horrified recognition. Uchiha? He whispered, his voice cracking. What? What have I done? Before they could answer, Yagura cried out, his hands flying to his temples as a wave of malicious, alien chakra washed over him. His pupils constricted, and the terrified boy was gone, replaced by a cold, puppet-like emptiness. The genjutsu was reasserting itself. Naruto's sage sense flared, the invisible thread of the controlling chakra suddenly becoming a burning, tangible line. He followed it, not with his eyes, but with his mind. It didn't lead outside, or to another country. It led down, deep beneath the tower. Sasuke. Naruto's voice was a sharp command. I found him. The puppet master. He's here. Sasuke didn't hesitate. He trusted his brother's senses as much as his own eyes. Naruto grabbed his shoulder. Hold on. With a final flash of gold, they vanished from the throne room, leaving the now controlled Mizukage to rise from his throne just as Mei and Zabuza's assault began on the floor below. They reappeared in a place of absolute darkness, a hidden chamber deep in the foundations of the tower. The air was cold and damp, the only light coming from the faint, eerie glow of a single, swirling orange mask. A figure stood with his back to them, seemingly observing a blank stone wall. He wore the familiar black cloak with red clouds. Well, a voice echoed in the chamber, a bizarrely cheerful, high-pitched tone that was utterly at odds with the suffocating killing intent in the room. You found Toby's secret clubhouse. You're not supposed to be here. Toby is a good boy. The figure turned, and the single, dark hole in his orange, spiral-patterned mask fixed on them. Behind that mask, a Mangekyo Sharingan, identical to the one Itachi had described from that terrible night, spun to life. Naruto-kun, Sasuke-kun. Fancy meeting you here. The figure, Toby, said, his head tilting with a mock innocence. You're interrupting Toby's playtime with his favorite cage. The childish taunt, you're interrupting Toby's playtime, echoed in the cold, dark chamber, a bizarre and chilling prelude to the storm. Naruto's sage sense flared. He felt the malicious chakra Toby was pouring through the invisible thread connecting him to the Mizukage in the throne room above. It was a flood, an overwhelming torrent of will. Sasuke, he's forcing the transformation, Naruto yelled. As if in response, the entire tower above them began to groan, the ancient stone screaming under an immense, unnatural pressure. Cracks raced down the walls of their hidden chamber. Toby is going to have to ask you to leave. The masked man said, his voice dropping the childish affectation, becoming a low, dangerous baritone that was far more terrifying. This chamber is about to become the foundation of a Baijuu. Outside, the citizens of Kirigakure and the warring shinobi factions stopped their fighting and looked up in horror. The Mizukage's tower was swelling, distorting, a massive, grotesque cocoon of stone and chakra. With a final, catastrophic roar, the tower exploded outwards. From the rubble, a monster of legend emerged. It was a colossal, gray, turtle-like beast with 3 massive, spiked tails. Its single right eye glowed with a malevolent red light, and it let out a shriek that was a mixture of a beast's rage and a man's tortured scream. Isabu, the 3 tails, had been unleashed in the heart of the capital city. Oh, Toby isn't done yet. The masked man declared from the chamber below. He held out his hand, and the space before him shimmered and warped, the same swirling vortex of his kamui opening up. From its depths, another beast was violently expelled. It was a colossal, slimy, 6-tailed slug, its body oozing a corrosive, acidic slime that instantly began to eat away at the stone floor. Seiken, the 6 tails. The 2 brothers stared. 2 fully transformed tailed beasts, one rampaging above and one trapped below with them. This guy. Sasuke breathed, his Sharingan spinning as he processed the impossible situation. Is a problem, Naruto finished grimly. I'll handle the big ones. You get the masked freak. Without another word, Naruto vanished in a golden flash, reappearing on the surface amidst the screaming civilians and stunned shinobi. He stood before the rampaging 3 tails, a lone figure against a god of destruction. Summoning jutsu, he roared, slamming his hand on the ground. A pillar of crimson energy erupted, and Kurama appeared, his 9 tails lashing the air with a furious, gleeful snarl. 2 at once? The great fox boomed, his gaze flicking between the 3 tails in front of him and the 6 tails that was already beginning to dissolve the foundations of the ruined tower. Now this is a party. Naruto's body was instantly enveloped in the crimson, ethereal armor of the Susanoo, which then expanded, encasing Kurama in its divine protection. The armored Kurama stood tall, a sight that brought a wave of horrified awe from everyone watching, friend and foe alike. You take the turtle, I'll take the slug, Naruto commanded from within the avatar. The armored Kurama charged, a living mountain of chakra and fury, meeting the 3 tails head-on. The impact of their clash sent a shockwave that leveled what was left of the surrounding buildings. The city had become a battlefield for gods. Deep below, Sasuke faced Toby alone. The masked man just chuckled. Your brother is so dramatic. But a Baijuu is a Baijuu. He will be overwhelmed eventually. He charged, his movements a bizarre, almost clumsy-looking dance. Sasuke met him head-on, his kusanagi blade humming with lightning. He swung, aiming to decapitate the man, but the blade passed harmlessly through Toby's head as if he were a ghost. Toby's own hand phased through Sasuke's defense and aimed for his throat. Sasuke was ready. A cage of black, crackling lightning, Chidori Senbone, shot from his hand, not at Toby, but around him, forcing the masked man to solidify to avoid the attack. In that instant, Sasuke's eyes changed. The 3 tomoe spun and morphed into a new, intricate, 3-bladed pattern. His own Mangekyo Sharingan. He saw it. The single, red, spinning eye behind the mask. The specific, unique pattern of the Mangekyo. A memory, buried deep, from that horrific night, resurfaced. The masked man standing beside Itachi. The pieces began to click into place, a horrifying, dawning realization. It was you, Sasuke whispered, his voice a low, dangerous growl. You were there that night. You're the reason, Itachi. Toby doesn't know what you're talking about. The masked man chirped, his childish voice returning. But Sasuke saw through it. He felt the flicker of surprise. He was right. Itachi is a tragic story. Tobi's voice became serious again. But I can give you the truth. I can give you power beyond his. Power beyond your brothers. Join me, Sasuke-kun. Together, we can change this miserable world. He offered a hand. I can even give you Itachi. Sasuke just snarled. Amaterasu. A vortex of pure black fire erupted from his left eye, aimed not at Tobi, but at the space he would need to occupy to attack. The undying flames forced Tobi to become intangible, buying Sasuke a precious second. Above them, the battle raged. The armored Kurama was a force of utter dominance, its Susanoo blades carving deep gouges into the three tails' thick hide. But the six tails, having finally melted its way to the surface, joined the fray, its corrosive slime a constant threat to Kurama's physical form. Naruto, from within the avatar, gritted his teeth. He couldn't keep this up forever. He unsealed two massive, blank scrolls from his back, letting them unfurl in the wind. It was time to end it. He focused his chakra, the Susanoo's hands blurring through a series of complex, one-handed seals. Kurama, meanwhile, pinned the six tails with three of his own tails and unleashed a point-blank tailed beast bomb on the three tails, stunning the beast and leaving it vulnerable. Fuinjutsu, by Juu Soul Subjugation Seal, Naruto roared. An explosion of glowing, golden chains erupted from the scrolls, wrapping around both tailed beasts. The beasts roared, not in pain, but in outrage, as their chakra was forcibly suppressed, their connection to their host severed. The massive forms dissolved into pure energy, which was then siphoned into the two scrolls with a sound like a rushing waterfall. When the light faded, the beasts were gone, and the two scrolls, now glowing with an immense, contained power, rolled themselves shut. The host of the six tails, a captured mist shinobi, fell to the ground, dead. But Yagura, the Mizukage, was still alive, albeit barely, convulsing on the ground. Naruto appeared beside him in a flash, his hand glowing with the calm, green light of nature energy. He placed it on Yagura's chest, funneling a gentle stream of sage chakra into him, stabilizing his life force. Down below, Tobi saw it all. His two trump cards, gone. His plan, shattered. He looked at Sasuke, whose black flame still flickered menacingly. This was fun. He chirped, before being sucked into a swirling vortex, vanishing without a trace. Naruto appeared beside a panting, exhausted Sasuke. The battle was over. They were left standing in the ruins of a city, surrounded by the silent, awestruck stares of thousands of shinobi and civilians who had just witnessed a legend save their world. The silence that followed Tobi's departure was profound, broken only by the distant crackle of fires and the groans of the wounded. The battle was over. The city was in ruins, but it was free. As Mei Terumi, Zabuza, and the other rebel commanders began to restore order, a strange and beautiful thing happened. The fear that had gripped Kirigakure for years, a cold, oppressive mist as thick as any jutsu, finally began to lift. In its place, a tentative, then roaring, wave of jubilation erupted. People poured out from their homes and shelters, not to survey the damage, but to celebrate their liberation. Where the city's bar district had been reduced to rubble, impromptu stalls and tents sprang up. A barkeeper rolled out a salvaged keg, and a cheer went up. Music, hesitant at first, then joyous and defiant, began to fill the night air. They were celebrating amidst the wreckage of their homes, a testament to the resilience of a people who had forgotten what it felt like to have hope. Naruto and Sasuke walked through the burgeoning festival, two silent observers in a sea of joy. They were offered drinks, hailed as heroes, but they politely declined, their minds still processing the day's revelations. The masked man, Sasuke said, his voice a low, dangerous rumble that was barely audible over the music. His mangekyo. It was a space-time jutsu. Like yours. But different. Kamui, Naruto confirmed, his own expression grim. Itachi saw it too. He told me. It comes in a pair. One for each eye. The right eye teleports the user and things they touch. The left eye can teleport things at a distance. He looked at his brother. The man you fought had the right eye. My mangekyo has the left. The implication was staggering. They were two halves of the same power. But that's not what's bothering me, Naruto continued, his sage sense feeling the cold, analytical storm churning within his brother. He decided to give him the final piece of the puzzle. When I was younger, Father and Itachi came into my mindscape to talk to Kurama. Sasuke stopped, turning to face him fully. Kurama mentioned him then, Naruto said, his voice quiet. He said, that's what the other one said. The masked one with eyes like yours. He was talking about Itachi. About our clan. The pieces, scattered across years of tragedy and secrets, finally slammed into place in Sasuke's mind. The masked man at the massacre. The shared mangekyo. The control over a baijuu. The strange, almost intimate knowledge of their clan's politics. He didn't just help Itachi that night, Sasuke breathed, his voice a mixture of dawning horror and cold, hard certainty. He orchestrated it. He used our clan's resentment to push them towards a coup, and then he used Itachi's love for the village to make him the butcher. Itachi didn't fall to darkness. His fists clenched, his knuckles white. He was pushed. The truth was a bitter, poisonous thing. But it was the truth Itachi had challenged them to find. Naruto looked at his brother, at the storm of grief and rage in his eyes. He placed a hand on his shoulder. "Let's think about that tomorrow," he said softly. "He's out there. We'll find him. We'll find them both. But for tonight." He gestured to the celebrating city, to the people dancing and singing in the streets. "For tonight, let's join the party." Sasuke looked from the joy of the liberated city to the calm, steady strength in his brother's eyes. He gave a single, slow nod. Naruto grinned, his usual charismatic energy returning. He scanned the crowd, his sage sense a perfect party radar. His gaze locked onto a particularly lively tent, from which the sounds of loud laughter and clinking glasses emanated. He could feel two powerful, familiar chakra signatures inside. He glanced over at Sasuke, who had spotted the same thing, his Sharingan picking out the details from 100 yards away. In the center of the tent, at a makeshift table, sat Mai Terumi. She had shed her battle gear and was in a simple, elegant blue kimono, her long auburn hair undone. She was laughing, a sound of pure, unadulterated relief, as she drank with another woman, a beautiful, blonde Kiri Kunoichi with a cheerful, vibrant aura. Sasuke looked back at Naruto, a single, questioning eyebrow raised. "Two-man?" he asked, the old Uchiha terminology for a two-person mission feeling perfectly natural. Naruto's grin turned predatory. "Let's go." They walked into the tent, and the lively chatter momentarily died down as the two heroes of the day made their entrance. Naruto, with an easy, confident swagger, walked directly towards the future Mizukage's table. Sasuke followed a step behind, his usual stoic presence a magnetic contrast to his brother's bright energy. "Mind if we join you, ladies?" Naruto asked, his smile a disarming, charismatic thing. It looked like this was the most fun table in the whole country. Mei looked up, her cheeks slightly flushed from the sake, her eyes sparkling. "Naruto dono. By all means. A celebration is not complete without its guests of honor." She gestured to the empty seats. "This is my friend and second in command, Swearin." The blonde Kunoichi, Swearin, gave them a warm, brilliant smile. Naruto slid into the seat next to Mei with a practiced ease. "So, Mei dono," he began, his voice a low, charming murmur. "Now that you're not trying to run a war, what does the most powerful woman in the mist do for fun?" Sasuke took the seat next to Swearin. He didn't offer a charming line. He simply met her gaze with his dark, intense eyes and gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. "Swearin," he said, his voice a quiet rumble. "That is a nice name." The conversations that began in the lively, makeshift bar continued long into the night, two separate but intertwined threads in the tapestry of the city's joyous celebration. The war was over. The hunt for the truth could wait. For tonight, they were just two brothers, in a foreign city, enjoying a well-earned peace. The first rays of the new dawn cast a soft, gray light through the flap of the large command tent that had been given to the Mizukage-to-be. Naruto woke slowly, the sage sense within him already painting a perfect, high-definition picture of the world. He felt the gentle rhythm of the sleeping city, the distant cry of a seabird, and the warm, steady presence beside him. He turned his head. Mai Terumi was still asleep, her long auburn hair a dark, silken river against the simple white of the pillow. Her face, free from the stress of war and leadership, was peaceful, serene. It was, he thought, a truly beautiful sight. A profound, quiet satisfaction settled in his chest. This was what they had fought for. Not for glory, but for quiet mornings like this. He carefully slipped out of the bed, his movements silent so as not to wake her. He found his clothes, neatly folded on a nearby chair, and dressed in the pre-dawn chill. As he stood, ready to leave, he looked back at her one last time, a small, genuine smile on his face. He pulled the blanket up, tucking it gently around her shoulder, before turning and stepping out of the tent into the cool morning air. The city was quiet, the remnants of the previous night's celebration a testament to a freedom long overdue. Naruto leapt to the rooftops, his senses already searching. It didn't take him long. He found his brother sitting on the edge of the highest roof of the ruined Mizukage Tower, looking out over the mist-shrouded capital as the sun began to rise. Sasuke didn't turn as Naruto landed silently beside him. They sat in a comfortable silence for a long moment, watching the light burn the mist away from the sea. "How was it?" Naruto asked, his voice a quiet murmur. Sasuke let out a soft, almost inaudible scoff, a ghost of a smirk on his lips. "None of your business." Naruto chuckled, the sound warm in the cool morning air. "Fair enough." They sat for a while longer, two brothers at the top of a world they had just saved. "The truth," Sasuke said finally, his voice losing its lighthearted edge. "What do we do now? We know about the masked man. We know he manipulated Itachi. We hunt him," Naruto replied, his own voice hardening. "The intel we got from the Akatsuki hideout, the intel you got from Orochimaru. Somewhere in there is a clue to where they'll strike next. We're not waiting for them to come for us anymore. We're taking the fight to them. Itachi will be with them," Sasuke stated. It wasn't a question. "I know," Naruto said. "And when we find him, we're not going to fight him. We're going to bring him home. Together." He looked at his brother, his eternal Mangekyo a calm, steady crimson in the morning light. "And we're going to make the man who did this to our family pay." Sasuke nodded, his own Mangekyo flaring in response. Their path was clear. They sat in comfortable silence for a while longer, two brothers at the top of a world they had just saved. Below them, the city of Kirigakura was beginning to stir. The sounds of the previous night's frantic celebration had faded, replaced by the purposeful noise of a new day. The sounds were different now. They weren't the hushed, fearful movements of a populace under tyranny, but the sounds of rebuilding. The clang of hammers, the chatter of vendors setting up stalls, the laughter of children who, for the first time, were playing in streets free from the shadow of a monster. It was the sound of life returning. "It's a good sound," Naruto said quietly, his sage sense soaking in the vibrant, hopeful energy of the city. Sasuke grunted in agreement, a rare, peaceful look on his face. Naruto stretched, the first golden rays of the sun warming his face. "Well, as much as I'd like to stick around, we should probably get back to Konoha. Tsunade will have our heads if we're late for the debrief." As the words left his mouth, his senses picked up the soft, deliberate sound of 4 feet approaching from behind them on the rooftop ledge. He didn't turn, a small smile playing on his lips. "Leaving so soon? Just like that?" Mei Terumi's voice was a gentle, teasing murmur. She and Swearin, having woken to find their respective tents empty, had found each other and come looking for their saviors. They now stood a few feet behind the brothers, their expressions a mixture of gratitude and a quiet, reluctant sadness at their imminent departure. Naruto finally turned, his smile widening as he looked at Mei. "Morning. Can't save the world and then sleep in, you know. It's bad for the brand." Mei rolled her eyes, but the smile she returned was genuine. She walked to the ledge, standing beside him and looking out at her city. "It looks different this morning," she said, her voice filled with a quiet wonder. "For the first time in years, it feels like mine again. Like ours." "It is," Sasuke said, his voice a quiet affirmation. He and Swearin now stood beside them, 4 figures watching the dawn of a new era for the mist. "And what about you two?" Swearin asked, her gaze soft as she looked from Naruto to Sasuke. "What's next for the heroes of the world?" "A long walk home," Naruto said with a shrug. "And then a hunt." Mei heard the shift in his tone, the light-hearted charm replaced by a cold, hard resolve. "The masked man," she stated. It wasn't a question. "He's the last piece on the board," Sasuke confirmed, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "The one who started all of this. We end it with him." The weight of their personal war settled over the rooftop, a stark reminder that even in victory, their own battle was far from over. Mei placed a gentle hand on Naruto's arm, her touch a warm, grounding presence. "When you are done," she said, her voice a quiet promise, "Kirigakura will be here. And we will not forget what you have done for us. You will always have a home here, Naruto Uchiha." Naruto looked at her, at the sincerity in her eyes, and the weight on his shoulders felt a little lighter. He gave her a nod, a silent thank you that said more than words ever could. "We'd better get going," he said finally. Their departure was not a grand, ceremonial affair. There were no speeches, no parades. They walked, the two of them, through the streets of the recovering city. The people, however, stopped what they were doing. They cleared a path. They bowed their heads in respect, their faces filled with a silent, profound gratitude. As they approached the main gate, Naruto, his ever charismatic self, couldn't help but turn, a wide, brilliant grin on his face, and give a final wave to the awestruck crowd that had gathered. Sasuke watched him, a dry, amused smirk on his face. "You're a real people pleaser, you know that?" he said as they passed through the gates and began their leisurely walk back towards the land of fire. Naruto just shrugged, his hands behind his head as he looked up at the clear morning sky. "Being liked is good," he said, his voice thoughtful. "It's far better than being hated, don't you think?" Chapter 13. The simple, heartfelt question lingered in the air between them, a quiet echo of their shared history. "It's far better than being hated, don't you think?" Sasuke looked at his brother, at the easy, genuine smile he offered the world, at the warmth he radiated that drew people in like moths to a flame. He thought of his own path, a road paved with darkness, secrets, and the cold, isolating weight of a mission that had forced him to be hated. He thought of the lonely nights in Orochimaru's hideout, his only companions the whispers of a madman and the ghosts of his own ambition. Naruto was right. It was better. A rare, genuine smile touched Sasuke's own lips. "Yeah," he admitted, his voice quiet. "It is." The rest of their journey back was a comfortable, easy affair. For the first time in years, there were no secrets between them, no walls. They spoke of everything. Sasuke detailed the brutal realities of his infiltration mission, the constant paranoia, the difficult choices he'd had to make. Naruto, in turn, told him of the Kitsune realm, of the blindness, of the impossible choice he'd had to make to reclaim his sight, and of the unique, almost friendly partnership he had forged with the demon in his gut. They arrived at the gates of Konoha 2 days later, not just as brothers, but as equals, their shared burdens having finally reforged their bond into something stronger and more unbreakable than ever before. Their return was a quiet affair. They went directly to the Hokage Tower, delivering their full report to a relieved Tsunade. The war in the mist was over. A new, powerful ally had been secured. It was a total victory. Tsunade looked at the 2 young men before her, 2 of the last powerful Uchiha, Konoha's 2 greatest weapons, and made a decision. "The world is quiet for now," she said, her voice a mixture of Akage's command and a mentor's wisdom. "But the Akatsuki are still out there. The masked man, Tobi, is still a threat. The peace we have is temporary, a breath before the next storm." She looked at them, her gaze sharp and intense. "The 2 of you, operating as a single unit, are the most powerful force on this continent. Your mission from here on out is singular: you will hunt. You will use the intel we have to systematically dismantle the Akatsuki, piece by piece. You are no longer Team 7. You are Konoha's Alpha Strike Unit. You answer to no one but me. Understood?" "Understood," they said in perfect, chilling unison. Weeks later, the summons came. The intel was confirmed. A suspected Akatsuki agent had been spotted in the land of hot water, a known contact of the now deceased Kakuzu. It was their first official hunt. They moved at dawn, 2 shadows streaking through the forests. There was no need for talk, no need for strategy sessions. They were a single, cohesive unit, their movements perfectly synchronized. They found their target in a dingy, back-alley tea house. The man was a low-level functionary, a money launderer. He never knew what hit him. Sasuke was a phantom, his genjutsu trapping the man in a waking nightmare, while Naruto's sage sense confirmed he had no accomplices. Sasuke's Sharingan then tore through the man's mind, extracting every piece of information, names, locations, future meeting points. The entire operation took less than 5 minutes. It was a clean, silent, and utterly terrifying display of efficiency. As they left the tea house, blending back into the morning crowd, Sasuke paused. His gaze was fixed on a nearby bookstore. In the window was a familiar orange book. The Tale of the Utterly Gutsy Shinobi. A memory, faint and distant, of Jiraiya reading to him and Naruto as children, surfaced. "What is it?" Naruto asked, following his gaze. "Nothing," Sasuke said, turning away. But a new, quiet resolve had settled in his heart. They found him a week later, in a small village on the border of the Land of Rain. He wasn't hiding. He was sitting in an open-air cafe, a cup of tea in his hand, as if he had been waiting for them. Itachi Uchiha. He looked older, the lines of his face deeper, the sorrow in his eyes a bottomless ocean. He was alone. Naruto and Sasuke landed silently in the street before him, the villagers scattering in fear. Itachi didn't seem surprised. He took a slow, deliberate sip of his tea. "You're late," he said, his voice a quiet, weary thing. "I was beginning to think you'd never find me." He stood, his red clouded cloak billowing in the breeze. His Mangekyo Sharingan was already active, a silent declaration. "I know you have questions," Itachi said, his gaze falling on Sasuke, A universe of unspoken apology in his eyes. And I have answers. But you will have to earn them. He looked from Sasuke's cold, furious resolve to Naruto's calm, steady power. He saw the two boys he had left behind, now forged into men. He saw the truth of his sacrifice, and the hope for their future. Come, Itachi said, turning and walking towards the desolate, rain-swept plains outside the village. Let us end this. The plains were a gray, featureless expanse, the sky a perpetual sheet of weeping clouds. The three brothers stood opposite each other, the tension a palpable force that warped the very air. You have grown, Itachi stated, his voice a quiet murmur against the wind. It wasn't a compliment, it was an observation. A fact. We had too. Sasuke's voice was a low, dangerous growl. You made sure of that. There was no signal. The battle began. It was not a clash of rage, but a conversation of impossible skill. Itachi was a phantom, his movements a fluid, defensive dance. He didn't attack, he tested. Sasuke was a storm of black lightning, his kusanagi blade a blur, the power of his curse mark humming beneath his skin. He moved with a speed that surpassed the rakeage, each strike a precise, killing blow. But each strike was met with a perfect, almost lazy parry from Itachi's kunai. Naruto was a golden flash, a master of the battlefield. He used the Hiraishin to appear from every angle, his Rasengan a roaring vortex of power. But every time he struck, Itachi was already gone, leaving only the ghost of a crow dissolving into black feathers. Amaterasu, Itachi whispered. A vortex of black fire erupted from his eye, not at them, but between them, a wall of undying flame that forced them apart. It was a warning. A demonstration. Naruto's response was immediate. His own Mangekyo flared. Kamui. The black flames twisted, warped, and were sucked into a swirling void, vanishing as if they had never existed. Itachi's eyes widened almost imperceptibly. He had seen enough. He held up a hand. Enough. The fight, which had been a storm of cage-level power, ended as abruptly as it began. You have earned your answers, Itachi said, his Mangekyo fading, leaving only the deep, profound sadness in his eyes. He sat down, cross-legged, on the damp earth. Naruto and Sasuke, their own battle-ready auras receding, warily sat opposite him. The questions they had held for years, the anger, the confusion, all boiled to the surface. Why? Sasuke's voice was a raw, broken thing. The massacre. The clan. Tobi. We know he was there. We know he manipulated you. Naruto picked up the thread. We found your room in the Akatsuki hideout. We saw the drawing. You never hated us. You never hated the clan. His voice softened. So why, Itachi? Why did you let him turn you into a monster? Itachi was silent for a long moment, the rain beginning to fall, mingling with the single, silent tear that traced a path down his cheek. Because the only way to stop a monster is to become a bigger one. He told them everything. He told them of Tobi's manipulation, of Danzo's ultimatum, of the impossible choice he had been forced to make between his clan and his village. He told them of his secret mission, to join the Akatsuki, to learn their secrets, to be Konoha's eye in the heart of the storm. My path was a dark one, Itachi said, his voice heavy with the weight of his sins. And it is not yet over. The Akatsuki. They are not just collecting the Baijuu. That is merely a means to an end. He looked them both in the eye, his expression more serious than they had ever seen it. Their leader, Pain, intends to use the combined power of the tailed beast to create a jutsu that will bring the entire world to its knees. He believes he can force a true, lasting peace through absolute terror. His gaze hardened. He has grown impatient. The loss of so many of his members has forced his hand. All of the remaining Akatsuki, Pain, Konan, Kisame, Zetsu, and myself, are preparing for a final, all-out assault on Konoha. They will come for you, Naruto. They will come to tear the village apart to get to you. Naruto and Sasuke listened, the full, horrifying scope of the threat settling over them. So we fight them, Sasuke said, his hand clenching around the hilt of his sword. Yes, Itachi said. But not as enemies. A faint, weary smile touched his lips. My mission is almost complete. When they attack, I will be with them. I will be Konoha's blade in the darkness. I will create the opening you need to strike at Pain himself. He stood, the rain plastering his dark hair to his face. Go home, little brothers. Tell the Hokage. Tell father. Tell them to prepare. The final battle is coming. He looked at them one last time, and for the first time in a decade, the cold, distant mask was gone. He was just Itachi. Their brother. I am proud of you both, he whispered. You have become the men I always knew you would be. With that, he dissolved into a flock of crows, vanishing into the gray, weeping sky, leaving his two brothers alone on the plains with the truth, and the grim, heavy weight of the war to come. The gray, weeping sky of the land of rain seemed to mourn with them. Itachi's final words hung in the air, a heavy, suffocating weight that was far greater than any jutsu. The final battle was coming. Naruto and Sasuke stood in the rain-swept plains for a long moment after the last of Itachi's crows had vanished. The truth hadn't brought them peace, it had brought them clarity. A cold, hard, and furious clarity. All this time, Sasuke whispered, his voice a raw, broken thing. All this time, he was protecting us. Protecting the village. And we questioned him for it. We didn't know, Naruto said, his voice quiet but firm as he placed a hand on his brother's shoulder. He didn't want us to know. But we know now. And we know what we have to do. He looked at Sasuke, his eternal mangekyo spinning with a new, unshakable purpose. Let's go home. It's time to prepare for a war. Sasuke met his gaze and gave a single, sharp nod. With a brilliant, silent flash of gold, they vanished, leaving the lonely plains to the falling rain. In the tallest, most desolate tower in the heart of Amigakure, the village hidden in the rain, the mood was one of grim anticipation. The ethereal forms of the remaining Akatsuki stood in their designated places. Zetsu was a silent, plant-like observer. Kisame's grin was a predatory slash in the gloom. Itachi had just returned, his face an unreadable mask. At the head of the assembly stood Pain and Konan, their presence a cold, divine authority. Toby watched from the shadows, his single red eye glowing. It is decided, then, Pain's voice was a flat, emotionless declaration that echoed in the cavernous room. The hunt is over. The time for subtlety has passed. We move on Konoha with our full strength. Before another word could be spoken, a new voice, slick and laced with an unnerving confidence, echoed from the cavern's entrance. My. A war council? And here I thought I was the only one with grand ambitions. Every head turned. Standing there, cloaked in a dark purple robe, was Kabuto Yakushi. He was no longer the timid, unassuming Jinan from the Chunin exams, nor the loyal subordinate of Orochimaru. He had fully integrated his master's DNA, his skin a pale, snake-like white, his eyes golden slits. He radiated a powerful, perfected sage chakra that made even Kisame's hand move to his sword. Who is this insect? Kisame growled. An old snake who has shed his skin, Itachi stated, his voice a low warning. Kabuto, Pain's voice was cold. You are not welcome here. State your purpose before you are removed. Kabuto just chuckled, a dry, rasping sound. Oh, I think you'll want to hear my proposal. You seek the Baijuu, but you are short-handed. I have come to offer you a gift. An army to bolster your forces. He made a single, theatrical hand sign. Edo Tensei. Two coffins erupted from the stone floor with a deafening crash. The lids fell away, revealing two familiar, gray-skinned figures. Deidara and Sasori stood there, their eyes vacant, the black sclera of the reanimation jutsu a horrifying testament to their enslavement. A little reunion. Kabuto chirped. The reaction was instantaneous. Kisame's killing intent was a palpable wave. Itachi's mangekyo blazed. But it was Pain who was the most furious. You dare, he began, his voice dropping to a dangerous, divine whisper, to use a jutsu that plays with life and death in my presence? In the presence of a god? Oh, I dare much more than that, Kabuto said, his smile widening. He raised another hand. A third coffin materialized. This one was different. It was more ornate, and it radiated a power that made the very air feel heavy. You see, you have been planning your war based on a flawed premise. You believe you are the greatest threat to this world. He patted the coffin. But I have your trump card. And I have one of my own. The lid creaked open. Inside, his eyes closed as if in sleep, his long black hair framing a face known to every shinobi in the room, was the real, preserved body of Uchiha Madara. The silence was absolute. Toby, who had been watching from the shadows with an amused detachment, froze. His single Sharingan widened, the playful persona shattering in an instant. Pain's six paths stared, their Rinnegan eyes wide with a fury that was almost holy. Toby, Pain's voice was a low, rumbling thunderclap of pure rage. What is the meaning of this? Toby didn't answer. He was staring at Kabuto, and for the first time, his voice was not the childish squeal or the serious baritone. It was a low, guttural snarl of pure, unrestrained hatred. Kabuto just grinned, his victory absolute. It seems your organization has been built on a foundation of lies. The tension was a razor's edge. But before Pain could unleash his divine wrath, Toby moved. He appeared before Kabuto, not to attack, but to stand as a barrier. It doesn't matter, Toby's serious, deep voice cut through the chaos, directed at Pain. This changes nothing. He looked at the reanimated Akatsuki members, at the body of Madara, and then at the remaining living members. Our goal is unchanged. We are about to end this era. Only Konoha stands in our way. He turned his single, burning Mangekyo-eye towards Pain. 6 of the remaining Baijuo reside within that village's sphere of influence. Once we have them, the rest will be trivial. This snake's little tricks are meaningless. He is an insect. We are a force of nature. Let us not be distracted from our purpose. He stared at Pain, a silent battle of wills passing between the two leaders. Finally, Pain's fury subsided, banked into a cold, calculating resolve. Toby was right. The endgame was here. Very well, Pain declared. Let the snake have his games. We have a village to destroy. The uneasy alliance was forged, a marriage of convenience between two immense and shadowy powers. Kabuto, with a self-satisfied smirk, allowed his reanimations to be absorbed back into the earth and took his leave, the coffin containing Madara's body vanishing with him. He had gotten what he wanted, a seat at the table in the fear of the world's most dangerous organization. Toby watched him go, his single Mangekyo-eye narrowed into a slit of pure, calculating hatred. The snake had overplayed his hand. He had revealed a truth that Toby had spent decades burying. For now, he was a useful pawn. But his lifespan, Toby decided, had just been significantly shortened. The plan is unchanged, Pain's voice cut through the tension, his 6 paths turning their collective Rinnegan gaze on the remaining members. The assault on Konoha will commence in 3 days. The full force of the Akatsuki will descend upon them. Konan, you will provide aerial support and handle their long-range defenses. Kisame, you will create a water prison around the village to cut off any escape or reinforcement. Zetsu, you will infiltrate and provide intelligence on their primary targets. He looked at Itachi. You know their defenses better than anyone. You will guide us to the Jinchuriki. Understood, Itachi said, his voice a perfect, emotionless monotone. Internally, his mind was already racing, formulating the final moves in a chess game that had spanned a decade. 3 days. He had 3 days to get a message to his brothers, to prepare them for the storm he was about to help unleash. The golden flash deposited Naruto and Sasuke not in the Hokage's office, but on the quiet, familiar training ground of the Uchiha compound. The journey back had been a somber, silent affair, the weight of Itachi's truth a heavy blanket over them. The compound was quiet. It was late, the moon high in the sky. As they walked towards the main house, 2 figures emerged from the shadows of the Ingawa. Fugaku and Mikoto. They had been waiting. They didn't ask for a report. They didn't need to. They could see it on their sons' faces. Itachi, Fugaku stated, his voice a low, heavy thing. Sasuke just nodded, unable to speak, the years of hatred and anger now a confusing, painful knot of grief and understanding in his chest. It was Naruto who spoke, his voice quiet but firm. He told us everything. The massacre, Toby, the secret mission. He looked at his parents, his eternal Mangekyo seeing not just their forms, but the sorrow and the weight they had carried for so long. And he told us they're coming. All of them. In 3 days. The news, which should have been a bombshell, was met with a grim, almost fatalistic acceptance. This was the day they had all been preparing for, the final battle that had been brewing since that first, terrible night. Mikoto's composure finally broke. A silent tear traced a path down her cheek as she pulled both her sons into a fierce, desperate hug. My boys, she whispered. All of my boys, caught in this endless war. Fugaku placed a hand on his wife's shoulder, his own face a mask of stone that couldn't hide the storm in his eyes. He looked at his 2 youngest sons, no longer the children he had trained, but the hardened, cage-level warriors they had become. Then we will be ready for them, he said, his voice a low rumble of pure, unshakable Uchiha pride. The next 48 hours transformed Konoha. There was no public alarm, no panicked evacuation. The village began to move with a quiet, deadly purpose. In the Hokage's war room, Tsunade stood before the Uchiha family, Jiraiya, and her top commanders. This will be a battle of deception, she declared, her voice sharp and decisive. Itachi is our eye in the storm, and we will not compromise his position. To the outside world, this will appear to be a surprise attack. We will prepare in secret. Her gaze fell on Naruto. Naruto, I need you to reinforce the civilian evacuation bunkers. Use your Fuinjutsu. I want them to be able to withstand a direct hit from a Baijuo. Then, send a single, long-range shadow clone to the border of the Land of Rain. It is to suppress its chakra to the bare minimum and act as our silent alarm. The moment it dispels, the evacuation begins, and not a second before. The plan was brilliant. It would give the civilians the maximum amount of time to get to safety while ensuring Itachi's cover remained intact until the very last moment. Tsunade then laid out the battlefield. Pain is their leader, she said, looking at a diagram Naruto had helped create. But he is a puppeteer. Jiraiya and I will leave the village under the cover of a diversion. Our mission is to find the real Pain, Nagato, and sever the head of the snake. Her eyes turned to Fugaku and Sasuke. You two will lead the Uchiha forces. Your target is the masked man, Tobi. His space-time jutsu is the greatest strategic threat. Your Mangekyo are our only counter. Naruto, she continued, you are our central pillar. You will face the 6 paths of pain. Your objective is to hold them, to draw their attention and their power, to create the opening Jiraiya and I need. Kakashi, Guy, she commanded, turning to her 2 top jonin. You will handle Kisame. He is a monster and will require your full strength. Asuma, Kurenai, the rest of the jonin, you will be led by Mikoto. Mikoto Uchiha stepped forward, her gentle demeanor replaced by the cold, sharp focus of the kunoichi she had once been. Your target is Konan. She controls the sky. You will deny it to her. A grim, determined silence filled the room. The plan was a complex, beautiful, and terrifying machine of war. It was a perfect plan, designed to counter a known enemy. But in the shadows of the world, another player, a wild card with an army of the dead, watched and waited, an unforeseen variable that could bring even the most perfect machine to a grinding halt. On the 3rd day, the sky over Konoha was a clear, brilliant blue. The village was quiet, the streets empty. But beneath the surface, it was a coiled spring, a fortress of shinobi waiting for the storm to break. And then it came. Not as an army marching on the gates, but as a silent, terrible omen. The sky began to darken, the birds fell silent, and a single, gentle rain began to fall. A rain that felt wrong. A rain made of chakra. High above the village, perched on the highest spire, the 6 paths of pain stood, their Rinnegan eyes looking down upon the village they had come to judge. The world, the lead Pain, the Deva path, said, his voice a calm, divine. The world, the lead Pain, the Deva path, said, his voice a calm, divine whisper that carried on the wind, shall know pain. He floated higher, rising above the center of Konoha, his arms outstretched as if in a terrible, divine embrace. Below, the animal path summoned its beasts to begin the initial distraction, while the other paths began their surgical strikes. But this was all a prelude. The real judgment was at hand. Almighty push. It was not a sound. It was an event. A wave of pure, invisible, gravitational force erupted from the Deva path, expanding outwards in a perfect, silent dome of annihilation. The world distorted. Buildings, streets, training grounds, everything within the blast radius was not just destroyed, it was pulverized, reduced to dust and splinters in a single, catastrophic instant. The very foundations of the Hidden Leaf village were scoured from the earth. The wave of force crashed against the outer walls, and then silence. A colossal, perfectly circular crater was all that remained of the bustling heart of Konoha. From his vantage point, the Deva path scanned his work, the shared vision of the Rinnegan feeding him information. He expected to feel the life force of thousands extinguished, a chorus of silent screams to echo in his senses. Instead, he felt nothing. An eerie, unnatural emptiness. The thousands of chakra signatures he had sensed just moments before were gone. They are not here, the Deva path stated, his divine calm finally cracking with a hint of confusion. Tobi appeared beside him in a swirl of distorted space, his single Sharingan taking in the devastation. Evacuated, he stated, his voice a low, dangerous growl. They knew we were coming. His gaze sharpened, and a single name dripped from his lips like poison. Itachi. Pain's face twisted in a mask of cold, divine fury. His ultimate judgment, his perfect lesson, had been delivered to an empty room. The betrayal was absolute. It was then that they saw them. Standing defiantly on the one structure still largely intact, the Hokage monument, were the shinobi of the Hidden Leaf. They had not been hiding. They had been waiting. With a collective, silent roar of defiance, they leapt. A wave of black and blue and green descended from the faces of the past leaders, a living avalanche of Konoha's will. The battle for the Hidden Leaf began not with a surprise attack, but with a counter-assault. Tsunade and Jiraiya, a brilliant son of power, ignored the chaos, their senses locked on a single, massive chakra source hidden in the highest trees outside the village. Let's go cut the head off the snake, Jiraiya roared, the two Sannin vanishing in a blur. In the Uchiha compound, Tobi phased through the main gate, only to be met by a wall of crimson eyes. Fugaku and Sasuke stood at the forefront, their mangekyo already spinning. Today, Fugaku's voice was a low growl of pure, unrestrained hatred. "You will pay for the sins you have laid upon our clan." Mikoto Uchiha led her own squad into the skies, her Sharingan tracking the paper angel, Konoha. Kakashi and Guy met Kisame at the river's edge. The battlefield had been drawn, every major player moving to their designated target with terrifying efficiency. And in the center of the newly formed crater, as the dust began to settle, Naruto Uchiha stood alone. He looked up at the 6 figures who landed in a circle around him, their Rinnegan eyes glowing with a cold, divine light. He closed his own eyes, and the world bloomed into the vibrant, humming reality of Sage Mode. He felt it all. He felt his parents and brother engage Tobi. He felt Jiraiya and Tsunade racing towards Nagato. He felt his comrades locking into their own life or death battles. He opened his golden, sage-marked eyes and gave the 6 paths of pain a slow, predatory smile. "All right," Naruto said, his voice a calm, resonant thing that cut through the chaos. "Who wants to dance first?" The battle began not with a clash, but with a symphony of destruction orchestrated by Naruto. The 6 paths attacked as one, a perfectly synchronized unit of diverse and deadly abilities. The Asura path unleashed a barrage of missiles, the human path lunged to tear out a soul, and the Deva path raised its hand, ready to unleash another gravitational wave. Naruto was a golden phantom, a god of the battlefield. He didn't just dodge, he dismantled. He used Hiraishin to appear in the Asura path's blind spot, a sage-enhanced Rasengan obliterating the cyborg body before its rockets had even reached their apex. He met the human path's charge head-on, his sage claws severing the soul-stealing arm at the elbow before landing a rib-shattering kick. He was fighting 6 opponents at once, and he was winning. Across the village, the other battles raged with equal ferocity. Fugaku and Sasuke were a perfect, deadly duo against Tobi, their coordinated mangekyo abilities forcing the masked man into a constant, defensive phasing. Kakashi and Guy were a whirlwind of green and white, their taijutsu and ninjutsu a beautiful, seamless dance that kept the monstrous Kisame and his chakra-eating sword, Seimata, completely on the defensive. They were holding the line. The plan was working. And then, everything changed. Naruto, in the midst of his dance with the pains, froze. His sage sense, his perfect, all-encompassing perception of the battlefield, suddenly screamed. It wasn't the arrival of a single new enemy. It was a wave. A tidal wave of hundreds of new chakra signatures, appearing all at once on the outskirts of the village. And they felt wrong. They were cold, dead, tinged with the dust of the grave. On the northern front, Fugaku's mangekyo widened in shock. What is this? This chakra? From the earth surrounding the crater, the ground began to churn. Hands clawed their way out of the dirt, followed by familiar, horrifying faces. Shinobi long dead, heroes and villains of past wars, rose from the ground, their eyes vacant, the black sclera of the Edo Tensei a testament to their enslavement. The second Tsuchikage. The third Reikage. A dozen famed jonin from every village. An army of the dead had just joined the battle. And leading them, walking calmly through the rising tide of corpses, was Kabuto Yakashi, his face twisted in a smug, serpentine smile. "Did I miss the party?" he chirped. The Konoha forces faltered. The perfect plan was shattered, their designated targets now shielded by a wall of their own fallen heroes and legendary enemies. How could they fight this? In the center of the crater, Naruto's calm focus did not break. He saw the new variable, the chaos Kabuto had just injected into the battlefield, and he adapted. He placed a single hand on the dusty ground of the crater, closing his eyes and pouring his sage chakra into the earth, not as an attack, but as a signal. His consciousness raced through the planet's natural energy, a telepathic spear aimed at a single, familiar mind. "Get me through to the Intel division," he thought. "Get me Inoki Yamanaka. Now." A mile outside the village, in a hidden, subterranean communications bunker, Inoki Yamanaka's head snapped up, his eyes wide. What? What was that? He had felt it, a mental shout so powerful it had bypassed his own sensors and plugged directly into his brain. "Inoki-san," Naruto's voice echoed in his mind, calm and clear. "There's a new player. Kabuto. He's using the Edo Tensei. An army of them." Inoki's blood ran cold. He relayed the information to his team, their faces paling in horror. "The plan has not changed," Naruto's mental voice commanded, a wave of unshakable resolve washing over the entire intel unit. "The primary targets remain the same. Tsunade and Jiraiya on Nagato. The Uchiha on Tobi. Kakashi and Gai on Kisame. I will handle the pains. But the army. Inoki sent back. We can't fight them and the Akatsuki at the same time. Our forces are already stretched to their limit. A faint, confident smirk seemed to echo in Naruto's mental voice. You're right. So I'll just have to bolster them. Back in the crater, Naruto opened his eyes. He looked at the 6 paths of pain, who had paused, equally surprised by the new arrivals. Looks like your friends are crashing the party, Naruto said. So I guess I'll have to invite a few of my own. He brought his hands together in the familiar cross seal, and the entire village seemed to hold its breath. Multi-shadow clone jutsu. It was not an explosion of a dozen clones, or 100, or even 500. It was a biblical event. A sea of orange and black erupted from the crater, a literal army of thousands of Sage Mode Narutos, each one radiating a power that made the reanimated shinobi pause. In addition, dozens of colossal, multi-tailed kitsune materialized from massive summoning scrolls that other clones had slammed onto the ground, their ethereal forms glowing with a predatory light. Go! The original Naruto roared. Reinforce every front. Do not let a single one of them interfere with the primary missions. The dead are ours to handle. With a collective, earth-shaking roar, the sage clones and their fox summons shot off in every direction, a golden tide of hope flooding the streets of Konoha, ready to meet the rising tide of despair. The true battle for the hidden leaf had just begun. The original Naruto turned his attention back to the 5 remaining paths of pain, his own battle far from over. Now, he said, his golden eyes burning with a cold fire. Where were we? Pain, his divine calm finally showing a crack of something akin to irritation, raised his hand. This world is a cycle of hatred. Peace can only be achieved through shared pain. You are an obstacle to that peace. Your peace is a lie, Naruto shot back, his voice resonating with sage energy. You talk about pain, but all you do is cause it. You don't know the first thing about what it means to endure. It was then that the true betrayal unfolded. While Naruto and Pain were locked in their philosophical standoff, a shadow moved beneath the earth. A figure erupted from the ground directly behind the Naraka path, the linchpin of Pain's resurrection ability. It was Itachi Uchiha. His movements were utterly silent, his presence completely masked until the last possible second. Pain's shared vision registered the threat a fraction of a second too late. Amaterasu, Itachi whispered. A vortex of pure black fire erupted from his Mangekyo, engulfing the Naraka path completely. The body didn't even have time to scream as it was consumed by the undying flames, turning to ash in an instant. The King of Hell, the path's resurrection summon, vanished with a silent, agonizing shriek. Itachi landed gracefully, his red clouded cloak a stark contrast to the chaos around them. He looked not at Pain, but at his younger brother. Now you have your chance, Naruto, Itachi said, his voice a calm, steady thing. He cannot heal his bodies anymore. Naruto stared, a wave of profound, triumphant relief washing over him. He had known, he had trusted, but to see his brother standing with him at the end of all things. Itachi, Naruto said, his voice thick with a decade of unspoken emotion. He gestured towards the northern sector, where he could feel his father and Sasuke battling Tobi. It's not over yet. Join us. Join the family. Let's end this together. Itachi looked in the direction of his family's fight, a flicker of a sad, weary smile on his face. My path ends here, little brother. I have one last sin to atone for. He turned his Mangekyo gaze, now bleeding from the use of Amaterasu, to the 5 remaining paths of pain. Go. Protect the village. I will handle this. The battle that ensued was a blur of sage arts and divine power. While Itachi Susanoo, a spectral warrior of burning red, engaged the summons of the animal path, Naruto became a golden whirlwind. He dismantled the remaining paths with a brutal, systematic efficiency. High above the village, Jiraiya and Tsunade finally reached their target. Nagato Uzumaki sat within a grotesque, machine-like walker, his emaciated body pierced with chakra rods, hidden in the highest branches of a colossal paper tree. Nagato. Jiraiya's voice was a pained roar. It's over. Nagato's Rinnegan eyes, filled with the universe of pain, looked down at his former master. It is only the beginning, sensei. He felt the last of his paths fall. He felt Itachi Susanoo closing in. He had one last, desperate move. He summoned the Deva path back to his side, a final guardian. In the crater, Naruto stood over the last, defeated path. He felt the Deva path vanish in a reverse summon. He turned to Itachi, his expression grim. Let's go. Father and Sasuke need us. They were about to leave when a new chakra signature, ancient, powerful, and utterly malevolent, appeared in the center of the crater. Kabuto's final trump card had arrived. A figure stood there, clad in the iconic, crimson armor of the Warring States period. Long, black hair framed a face that was both handsome and terrifying. And in his eyes, the red of the Sharingan swirled, not with the Mangekyo, but with the legendary, rippling pattern of the Rinnegan. Uchiha Madara. Well, Madara's voice was a deep, amused baritone as he looked at Naruto. You seem to be the strongest one here. His Rinnegan eyes narrowed, sensing something deeper, something familiar. And I can feel something else about you. A piece of me. Madara's grin was a terrifying expression of pure, battle-hungry joy. Let us dance, my dear descendant. The weight of the name, Uchiha Madara, was a physical force, a legend so vast it threatened to swallow the entire battlefield. Itachi's Mangekyo widened, his analytical mind struggling to process the impossible sight before him. This was the ghost his father and he had been hunting, the specter behind the masked man, made manifest. Naruto, however, did not have the luxury of shock. He was a commander in the midst of a war, and a new, god-level threat had just appeared on the board. He turned to his brother, his own resolve hardening into a diamond edge. Itachi, Naruto's voice was a low, urgent command that cut through the awe. Change of plans. His sage sense was a perfect map of the battlefield. He could feel the thousands of reanimated shinobi bogging down his clones and the village's forces. He could feel his family locked in a desperate battle against Tobi's reality-warping abilities. And he could feel the cold, serpentine chakra of the puppeteer controlling the army of the dead. Father and Sasuke can hold Tobi, Naruto stated, his confidence absolute. He's a defensive fighter. They can keep him contained. But that army of the dead. It's bleeding the village dry. The one controlling them, Kabuto, is the true linchpin of this battle. If he falls, his army falls with him. He turned his golden, sage-marked eyes to his older brother. Forget Tobi. Forget this ghost. He gestured to Madara. He is mine. Your mission is Kabuto. He is hiding on the western ridge. Find him. End him. Your atonement isn't just about our family, Itachi. It's about saving everyone. This is how you do it. Itachi looked from the legendary founder of their clan to his younger brother, who was now coolly delegating cage-level threats like a seasoned commander. The logic was flawless. Madara and Tobi were single, powerful threats. Kabuto was the strategic linchpin. To win the war, the snake had to be decapitated. He had come here to protect the village. Naruto was giving him the most direct path to do just that. With a single, solemn nod, Itachi Uchiha dissolved into a flock of crows, streaking not towards the Uchiha compound, but towards the western ridge, a silent blade aimed at the heart of the enemy's strategy. Naruto was alone, facing the ghost of his clan. A bold choice, Madara commented, his Rinnegan eyes tracking Itachi's departure with casual amusement. Sending away one of his strongest pieces to hunt my little summoner. You must have immense confidence in your own power. Something like that, Naruto said, his sage mode humming, feeding him a constant stream of information about the man before him. The chakra was ancient, terrifyingly powerful, and tinged with the familiar, earthy scent of Hashirama's cells. Madara began to walk forward, his armored footsteps echoing in the crater. You know, I've been watching. Observing through the eyes of my pawn. I saw you dismantle armies, tame Baiju'u, and rewrite the political landscape of the world. All of my carefully laid plans, decades in the making, undone by a single, unpredictable variable. He stopped, a mere 20 feet from Naruto. I was furious, of course. But also proud. Naruto's brow furrowed in confusion. To think, Madara said, a slow, cruel smile spreading across his reanimated face, that my own great-grandson was the one foiling all of my plans. The world, for a single, solitary second, stopped. The roar of the distant battles, the hum of his own sage energy, the very beat of his heart, it all went silent. Great-grandson? The pieces clicked into place with horrifying speed. The clan's secret Fugaku had revealed. Minato Namikaze. His paternal grandfather was secretly Madara Uchiha. It hadn't just been a political justification for his adoption. It had been the literal truth. The man who had unleashed the Kyūbi on the village, the man who had set in motion the chain of events that led to his parents' deaths, the massacre of his clan, and a lifetime of pain for his brothers, was his own ancestor. Madara saw the flicker of comprehension, the momentary stun. And he struck. He blurred forward, his speed inhuman, a black receiver rod appearing in his hand as if from nowhere. Naruto reacted on pure, honed instinct. His Susanoo flared to life, the crimson, skeletal ribcage manifesting just in time to intercept the blow. The receiver rod scraped against the ethereal bone with a high-pitched screech, but it held. Good, Madara said, his voice laced with a teacher's approval as he leapt back. You have a warrior's reflexes. That is my blood in you. I am nothing like you, Naruto snarled, the shock giving way to a cold, profound rage. Aren't you? Madara countered, his arms spread wide. Look at us. Wielders of the Rinnegan and the Mangekyo. We stand on a battlefield that we alone can command, ready to decide the fate of the world. You are more like me than any other Uchiha has ever been. Only a descendant of my line could reach such heights, he laughed, a sound that was a mixture of pride and fury. And that is what infuriates me the most. You have my power, but you wield it for their dream. For Hashirama's weak, sentimental vision of peace. He settled into the Uchiha's iconic battle stance, his Rinnegan glowing with a terrifying, divine light. I have seen the future that your path leads to. It is a future of endless, petty wars, of children dying for forgotten reasons. My path offers true peace. An end to all suffering. His gaze intensified, his killing intent a physical force that made the very air tremble. I had intended to simply remove you from the board. But now I see that would be a waste. A massive, ethereal blue aura exploded around him, forming into the four-armed, perfect form of his own Susanoo, two spectral blades in its hands. I will not kill you, Naruto Uchiha, Madara declared, his voice booming with the power of a god. I will educate you. I will push you to your absolute limits. I will burn away every last shred of the first Hokage's foolish ideals until all that is left is the pure, unadulterated power of my own bloodline. I will show you what it truly means to be Uchiha Madara's heir. While Naruto faced the ghost of his clan in the crater, the war for Konoha raged on, a series of desperate, legendary duels unfolding across the ravaged landscape. High in the canopy of the forest just beyond the village walls, the great paper tree that had been Nagato's sanctum was a shredded ruin. At its heart, Jiraiya and Tsunade faced the final guardian, the Deva Path. Nagato, his emaciated body slumped in its mechanical walker, watched them through his puppet's Rinnegan eyes. You should not have come, sensei. My pain is beyond your understanding now. I never should have left, Nagato, Jiraiya roared, his voice a pained, furious thing as he entered sage mode, the toad-like features settling on his face. He was a whirlwind of motion, his sage-enhanced taijutsu a blur. But the Deva Path met his every blow, its gravitational powers repelling him with bone-jarring force. I failed you once. I won't do it again. Tsunade was a force of nature. She didn't bother with subtlety. With a roar that shook the forest, she shattered the very ground the Deva Path stood on, her monstrous strength turning the battlefield into a shifting, unstable hellscape. The puppet was forced into the air, where Jiraiya was waiting. Sage art, Goemon, he yelled, spewing a colossal torrent of boiling oil, which Tsunade's summon, Katsuyu, met with a spray of acid, turning the attack into an inescapable, corrosive inferno. The battle of the Sannin against their fallen student had reached its climax. At the riverbank, inside the swirling dome of Kisame's water prison, the fight was a desperate struggle of chakra versus will. My Seimata loves the taste of your jutsu, Kakashi. Kisame cackled, his shark-like form moving through the water with terrifying speed. His great blade absorbed every lightning attack Kakashi threw, growing larger and more monstrous with each feast. Kakashi was on the defensive, his Sharingan tracking the monster, but he was in his enemy's element. Then he shall taste the full flavor of my youth. A voice boomed. Might Guy was a green demon, the turquoise aura of the seventh gate of shock radiating from his body like a second skin. The water prison itself recoiled from the sheer pressure of his power. This ends now, Kisame. Daytime Tiger. Guy punched the air, unleashing a colossal, tiger-shaped cannon of pure, compressed air pressure. It was not ninjutsu, it was the ultimate expression of taijutsu. The blast didn't just hit Kisame, it hit the entire water dome. The prison shattered, and the monstrous swordsman was sent flying, his body battered and broken by a force that Seimata could not absorb. He was suspended in the air for a single, vulnerable second. It was all Kakashi needed. The world seemed to twist around Kakashi's left eye as his Mangekyo spun to life. Kamui. There was no sound, no explosion. The space where Kisame's upper body had been simply warped, folding in on itself and vanishing into a swirling void. The swordsman's lower half fell into the river with a quiet splash, his reign of terror brought to a silent, brutal end. In the skies above, the battle of angels raged. Konan was a storm of a billion paper razors, a beautiful and deadly force of nature. But she was facing an Uchiha matriarch. Mikoto Uchiha, balanced perfectly on the back of a massive hawk summon, moved through the paper storm with a dancer's grace, her own Mangekyo Sharingan active. She did not see a storm, she saw the single, flowing river of chakra that connected every piece of paper back to its master. Her katana, wreathed in a faint, shimmering aura of heat, the heart of her flaming sword style, carved a path through the paper clones, the heat cauterizing the enchanted paper and preventing it from reforming. Your technique is beautiful, child, Mikoto's voice was a calm, almost gentle thing that cut through the chaos. But you fight with your heart. It makes you predictable. Using her Sharingan's predictive abilities, she found the path. She flowed through a gap in the paper barrage, appearing directly before the real Konan. She didn't strike with her blade. Her hand, moving with impossible speed, gently tapped Konan's forehead. It was a simple, precise strike infused with chakra, a technique designed to disrupt the flow of thought itself. Konan's eyes went wide, the complex jutsu that held her paper form together shattering in an instant. The paper angel dissolved, and she fell from the sky, caught by a waiting squad of Konoha Jonin who quickly applied suppression seals. The sky over Konoha was theirs once more. Across the village, the tide was turning. 2 of the Akatsuki's strongest lieutenants had fallen. But the true gods of the battle were still locked in their own, world-ending duels. In the vast, man-made crater that had once been the heart of Konoha, 2 gods of the Uchiha clan faced each other. The air crackled with a pressure so immense it felt as if the world itself was holding its breath. I will show you what it truly means to be Uchiha Madara's heir. Madara's voice boomed, his perfect blue Susanoo a towering effigy of divine, destructive power. Naruto met his ancestor's gaze, his own crimson Susanoo flaring to life around him. He felt the sheer, overwhelming power radiating from Madara, a force that dwarfed even the Akatsuki leader, pain. But in Naruto's heart, there was no fear. Only a cold, burning, righteous fury. You're not my ancestor. Naruto's voice was a low, dangerous growl, resonating with the power of his own avatar. You're a ghost. A bitter old man who couldn't accept that his time was over. And I'm here to send you back to the grave. Madara laughed, a sound like grinding mountains. Such fire. Such defiance. Yes. You are truly my blood. The 2 colossal avatars moved at the same time. The clash was not a sound, it was a cataclysm. Madara's twin spectral blades met Naruto's, and the resulting shockwave was a physical event, a dome of pure force that expanded outwards, pulverizing what little remained of the surrounding structures. The ground beneath them fractured, splitting into a spiderweb of deep, raw canyons. Naruto was powerful, his Susanoo fueled by his own immense chakra and the passive energy of Kurama. But Madara was a legend for a reason. His control was absolute, his movements honed by a century of war. He fought with a grace and brutality that Naruto was forced to match, their duel a beautiful, terrifying dance of gods. You feel it, don't you? Madara taunted as their blades locked, the force of their struggle sending arcs of pure energy screaming into the sky. The sheer, intoxicating power of the Uchiha. This is what you were born for. Not to be a glorified guard dog for this pathetic village. To prove his point, Madara disengaged and his Susanoo's 4 arms blurred through a series of one-handed seals. Fire style. Majestic destroyer flame. A sea of incandescent fire, a literal ocean of flame so vast it seemed to blot out the sky, erupted from the Susanoo's mouth. It was a jutsu on the scale of a natural disaster, designed to incinerate entire armies. Naruto's response was just as grand. Kurama, he yelled, not into the air, but into his own soul. Finally. The great fox's voice boomed back. I was getting tired of watching from the cheap seats. Naruto slammed his hands together. Summoning jutsu. A pillar of crimson energy erupted within his Susanoo, and the avatar swelled, its form shifting. A massive, 9-tailed fox of pure, malevolent orange chakra materialized, with Naruto's crimson Susanoo now encasing it in a suit of perfect, divine armor. The armored Kurama. The majestic destroyer flame washed over the avatar. The crimson armor glowed white-hot, but it held firm. The armored Kurama stood unbowed in the heart of the inferno, its 9 tails lashing the air. Madara's eyes widened, a flicker of genuine, stunned surprise in his Rinnegan. The fox. You have tamed it completely? You have succeeded where I, and every other Uchiha, have failed? The surprise quickly morphed into a new, deeper rage. Hashirama. Even from the grave, your sentimental foolishness infects my bloodline. He saw Naruto not as his heir, but as a perversion of his legacy, a fusion of his own perfect power with the ideals of his most hated rival. Then I will burn it all away, Madara roared. His Susanoo's 4 arms reached to its sides, and with a sound like tearing reality, drew 4 colossal, shimmering blue katanas. The sheer pressure of the unsheathed blades made the air hum. Let us see if your beast can dance. Naruto and Kurama responded in kind. The armored Kurama's two free hands clenched, and from them, two massive katanas of pure, condensed crimson chakra formed, humming with the power of both the Susanoo and the Nine Tails. The two avatars charged, a blue god with 4 blades against a crimson demon with 2. The clash was not a single impact, but a storm of them. 6 colossal swords met in the center of the crater, each strike a deafening thunderclap that sent arcs of blue and red energy screaming into the sky. It was the pinnacle of swordsmanship on a divine scale, Madara's centuries of experience against the raw, untamed fury of the Nine Tails guided by a prodigy's eyes. When vision returned, the crater was twice as deep, its edges fused into a ring of smooth, black glass. The two avatars still stood, battered but intact. But Madara felt it. A tremor. A crack. Not in his Susanoo, but in his own reanimated body. He looked down at his armored hands and saw a thin, hairline fracture spiderweb across his gauntlet. Kabuto's jutsu. It wasn't perfect. The reanimated vessel, for all its power, could not contain the full, unrestrained might of his soul. The strain of a battle at this divine scale was causing the shell to crumble. His grin became a feral, desperate snarl. His time was limited. It seems this borrowed body has its limits, Madara said, his voice a low growl of pure fury. No matter. It will be more than enough to educate you. He raised his Susanoo's hands to the sky. Then let this be your final lesson. Let us see if your will can withstand the judgment of a god. Shattered heaven. From the heavens, a meteorite, a colossal sphere of rock and fire the size of a mountain, began to descend, a final, world-ending judgment on the village of Konoha. Naruto's head snapped up, the mangekyo in his eyes widening as he took in the impossible sight. The descending meteorite blotted out the sun, a new, terrible moon promising only annihilation. He is insane. Kurama's voice roared in his mind, a note of genuine shock in the ancient beast's tone. He would destroy the entire battlefield, himself included, just to prove a point. Then we'll just have to prove a bigger one, Naruto roared back, his will and Kurama's merging into a single, defiant point. The armored Kurama didn't brace for impact. It aimed. The 9 massive tails of the avatar coiled and aimed skyward like cannons. At the tip of each tail, a swirling, violet-black sphere of pure, condensed by Juu chakra formed. 9-tailed beast bombs. Fire. 9 beams of raw, world-ending power shot into the sky, converging on the descending meteorite in a blinding flash of light. The explosion was silent, a catastrophic blossoming of energy that shattered the mountain of rock into a million harmless pebbles that burned to ash before they ever reached the ground. But it was a feint. A diversion on a divine scale. While Naruto's full attention was focused on the heavens, a new horror was unfolding in the shattered forest below. Jiraiya and Tsunade had finally cornered Nagato, the Deva path lying broken at their feet. It's over, Nagato, Jiraiya said, his voice heavy with a sorrowful finality. A new presence emerged from the ground behind Nagato's mechanical walker, a silent, swirling distortion of black. It was Black Zetsu. It is only just beginning, Zetsu's voice was a dry, ancient whisper. Before the two Sannin could react, Zetsu's hand plunged into Nagato's back. He wasn't attacking, he was taking control. Nagato's emaciated body convulsed, his hands forced into a final, unfamiliar seal. Geto, Rin Rebirth Jutsu. Nagato's hair turned bone white, the last of his immense Uzumaki life force pouring out of him. Jiraiya and Tsunade could only watch in stunned horror. They felt the shift in the world, a change in the very fabric of life and death. In the crater, Madara's reanimated body began to crack and crumble, the paper ash of the Edo Tensei flaking away. But beneath it, new, living flesh was forming. The cracks in his armor mended. His eyes, once the dead black of a reanimation, now held the vibrant, living light of his own soul. He took a deep, shuddering breath, the first he had taken in nearly a century. Finally, Uchiha Madara breathed, his own voice, not Kabuto's puppet, echoing with a profound, terrifying satisfaction. To feel the thrill of battle in my own flesh once more. He was alive. In the forest, Black Zetsu cackled, a dry, rasping sound of triumph. With Nagato's life force spent, he performed his final, ghoulish task. With 2 swift, brutal movements, he plucked the glowing, Rinnegan eyes from Nagato's now lifeless face. Your part is played, child of prophecy, Zetsu hissed. Jiraiya roared in pure, heartbroken fury and lunged, but Zetsu simply sank into the ground, phasing through the Sannin's attack and vanishing without a trace. Tsunade and Jiraiya were left standing in the silence, the empty-eyed corpse of their former student a horrifying testament to their failure. They had come to cut the head off the snake, and instead, they had witnessed the birth of a dragon. A tremor of dread, cold and absolute, washed over them. They felt it. The reanimated chakra of Madara, cold and artificial, had vanished from the world, replaced by a living, breathing signature of such immense, godlike power that it dwarfed everything else on the battlefield. Jiraiya looked at the body of his student, then back towards the village, his face a mask of grim resolve. He quickly unsealed a scroll, and with a few deft hand signs, sealed Nagato's body within it. "We have to go back," he said, his voice a low, urgent whisper. "Naruto is now facing a fully revived Uchiha Madara. And Zetsu has the eyes." While the divine battle between Madara and Naruto escalated to a world-altering scale, and the two Sannin raced back to the village with grim news, the quieter, more critical war was being fought on Konoha's western ridge. Itachi Uchiha moved like a ghost through the rock and shadow, a silent blade aimed at the heart of the enemy's strategy. His Sharingan saw not just the physical world, but the faint, almost invisible threads of chakra that connected the army of the dead back to their master. He followed them to their source, a dark, unassuming cave hidden behind a waterfall. Inside, Kabuto Yakashi was in his element. He sat cross-legged before a massive, makeshift chessboard of the battlefield, moving pieces representing his reanimated shinobi with a smug, serpentine smile. He was the god of this battle, the puppeteer pulling the strings of legends. Such beautiful data, he mused to himself, watching through a reanimated sensor's eyes as one of Naruto's clones was forced to use a Rasen Shuriken to obliterate the reanimated third Raikage. The Jinchuriki's power is even greater than Orochimaru-sama predicted. "Your game ends now, Kabuto." The voice was a calm, quiet whisper that cut through the sound of the waterfall and made Kabuto's blood run cold. He spun around. Itachi stood at the mouth of the cave, his Mangekyo Sharingan already spinning, a silent, crimson promise of death. Kabuto's shock quickly morphed into a confident, arrogant grin. He rose to his feet, his own sage markings appearing around his eyes, a hood of chakra forming horns on his head. "Itachi Uchiha. To think you'd abandon the main battle to come for little old me," he laughed, a dry, hissing sound. "A foolish choice. I am no longer a simple medic nin. I have surpassed Orochimaru-sama himself. I am the closest living thing to the Sage of Six Paths." "You are a snake playing dress-up in a dragon's skin," Itachi said, his voice a flat, emotionless thing. "And your borrowed power has made you arrogant." Kabuto just cackled and lunged, his body a blur, his hand a chakra scalpel aimed at Itachi's heart. But he was met by a wall of burning, ethereal ribs. The Susanoo. The battle was a clash of perfected powers. Kabuto was a master of sage art, his attacks unpredictable and imbued with the power of nature. He used the abilities of the Sound Five, his body contorting and liquefying, his flute-based genjutsu filling the cavern. But Itachi was a master of the Uchiha. His Susanoo was a perfect defense, its Yata mirror deflecting every ninjutsu, its sword of Totsuka a constant, sealing threat. Finally, seeing he could not win through direct combat, Kabuto played his trump card. "You think you can defeat me? I hold all the cards." He shrieked. With a flash of seals, two coffins erupted at his side. The reanimated forms of Deidara and Sasori stood ready. Itachi simply looked at them, then back at Kabuto, a flicker of something akin to pity in his eyes. "You rely on the strength of others because you have none of your own. You have no identity, no self. You are a collection of stolen powers, a hollow man." As he spoke, he moved. He flowed through Kabuto's reanimated puppets, his movements a fluid dance that was too fast for even Kabuto's sage senses to fully track. He wasn't aiming to kill. He was creating a loop. Kabuto found himself in a moment, relived. He saw Itachi flow past Deidara. He dodged a swing from the sword of Totsuka. He saw Itachi flow past Deidara. He dodged a swing from the sword of Totsuka. Over, and over, and over. "What is this?" Kabuto screamed, the confident smirk replaced by a mask of dawning, horrified realization. "This isn't a genjutsu. It is Izanami." Itachi's voice was a calm, dispassionate echo in the infinite loop. "A jutsu that decides fate. You are trapped, Kabuto. Not by my power, but by your own refusal to accept who you are. This loop will not end until you accept your true self and abandon this path of imitation." He stood before the frozen, wide-eyed form of Kabuto, who was now just a statue, his mind lost in a battle he could never win. "This is not an attack," Itachi said softly. "It is your salvation." With his enemy neutralized, Itachi walked to the catatonic sage. He placed a hand on Kabuto's, gently guiding them through a single, final hand sign. The release. Across the ravaged plains of Konoha, the army of the dead stopped. A brilliant, soul-white light enveloped each of them. The reanimated shinobi looked at their own hands, a flicker of their old selves returning as they felt their spirits being freed. With silent, grateful nods to their former opponents, they crumbled into dust and ash, the winds of the battlefield carrying them home. The war against the dead was over. Itachi stood in the quiet of the cave, his mission complete. He gave one last look at the trapped form of Kabuto. His atonement was not yet finished. He dissolved into a flock of crows, bursting from the cave and streaking across the sky, a dark river of purpose flowing towards the Uchiha compound. His family was still fighting. And he was coming to join them. In the heart of the Uchiha compound, the battle of the Mangekyo had reached a fever pitch. Fugaku and Sasuke were a perfect, deadly storm of blue and purple Susanoo, their movements a synchronized dance of destruction. Fugaku's avatar was a bastion of power, its Yata mirror deflecting Tobi's frantic attacks, while Sasuke's was a phantom of speed, its amethyst arrows of pure lightning forcing the masked man to remain intangible. They had him pinned. Tobi, or Obito as Itachi had named him, was trapped in a defensive loop, unable to land a single solid blow. This is pointless. Obito's voice was a frustrated snarl, the childish Tobi persona completely gone. You cannot touch me. My Kamui is absolute. An absolute defense is a prison of its own, Fugaku's voice boomed from within his Susanoo. You cannot attack while you are a ghost, Obito. You can only run. It was then that the sky above them darkened. A swirling vortex of crows descended, coalescing into a single, familiar figure. Itachi landed silently behind Obito, his own crimson Susanoo flaring to life, its sword of Totsuka already unsheathed. Obito froze. He was surrounded. 3 Uchiha, 3 wielders of the Mangekyo, 3 perfect Susanoo. He was trapped between the past, the present, and the future of the clan he had tried to destroy. It ends now, Itachi said, his voice a quiet finality. The 3 Uchiha moved as one. Itachi's Amaterasu, Fugaku's Susanoo blade, and Sasuke's black Chidori all converged not on Obito, but on the space around him, a perfect, 3-pronged trap designed to leave him no room to solidify or escape. With a final, desperate roar of pure, frustrated rage, Obito warped himself away, his body twisting and vanishing into a vortex, choosing a cowardly escape over certain annihilation. The battle for the Uchiha was over. The 3 of them stood in the quiet of their compound, 3 generations of Uchiha power, victorious. Fugaku, Itachi, and Sasuke let their Susanoos dissolve, the 3 of them panting slightly from the immense chakra they had expended. For a single, fleeting moment, there was a sense of profound, triumphant relief. They had faced the ghost that had haunted their family for a decade, and they had won. The moment was shattered by a tremor that had nothing to do with their battle. It was a ripple in the very fabric of the world, a spike of chakra so colossal, so terrifyingly vast and alive, it made every other fight on the battlefield feel like a child's squabble. They all turned as one, their Mangekyo Sharingan blazing as they looked towards the center of the village. They had all felt the reanimated Madara's chakra before, immense, but cold, artificial. This was different. This was the chakra of a living, breathing god, a son of pure, unrestrained power that had just ignited in the heart of their home. He's alive, Fugaku breathed, his voice a mixture of awe and absolute horror. The Edo Tensei. It was a shell. He's been fully revived. Itachi's face, which had shown a flicker of weary relief, hardened into a mask of grim resolve. And Naruto is facing him alone. Sasuke didn't speak. He just looked at his father, then at his older brother, and a silent, absolute understanding passed between the 3 of them. The war wasn't over. The final boss had just entered the field. Let's go, Sasuke said, his voice a low, dangerous growl. Without another word, 3 perfect Susanoos, Fugaku's deep blue, Itachi's burning crimson, and Sasuke's amethyst purple, erupted into existence. They didn't run, they flew, 3 armored gods streaking across the ravaged rooftops of their home, a river of Uchiha power flowing towards a single, desperate battle. They arrived at the edge of the massive crater at the same moment as 2 other figures. Jiraiya and Tsunade, their faces pale with a grim, horrified urgency, landed beside them. The 5 of them, Konoha's absolute strongest, skidded to a halt, their eyes widening as they took in the scene before them. It was a battle from the age of myths. In the center of the crater, Naruto's armored Kurama, a crimson demon of unimaginable power, was locked in a desperate, titanic struggle with Madara's perfect blue Susanoo. The 2 avatars were a blur of motion, their colossal blades clashing with a force that sent fissures racing through the very bedrock beneath the village. The scale of the fight was so immense, so far beyond what any of them had ever witnessed, that it seemed to be happening in another dimension. They had come to save Naruto. But as they watched him go toe-to-toe with the fully revived ghost of their clan, they realized he hadn't been losing. He had been holding the line. The two combatants broke their clash, the force of the disengagement sending a hurricane of wind and dust washing over the onlookers. They both turned, their divine gazes falling upon the new arrivals. Naruto, from within his avatar, saw his family, his mentors, his village's strongest, all assembled to stand with him. The relief was so profound it was a physical wave. A wide, confident, and utterly fearless grin split his face. Madara, however, had a different reaction. He looked at the two Sannin, the students of his greatest rivals. He looked at Fugaku, Itachi, and Sasuke, the last of his bloodline, all standing against him. His expression was not one of fear, or anger, or even surprise. It was one of pure, ecstatic joy. Hashirama. Madara's voice boomed, a laugh of pure, unrestrained bliss echoing across the ruins of the village. Oh, my friend, you should see this. It has been a lifetime since I have had a true challenge. And now, the world has finally brought me a battle worthy of my power. He looked at the 5 figures standing beside Naruto's colossal avatar. The Slug Princess. The Toad Sage. And the last of my pathetic clan, all standing together. He spread the arms of his Susanoo wide, a gesture of absolute, arrogant confidence. Excellent. Come, then. Come and face your history. Let us see if the combined will of fire can extinguish the flames of Uchiha Madara. Madara's challenge echoed across the ruins of Konoha, a declaration of war against the 5 most powerful shinobi in the village. But Naruto didn't move. A dance is for two, his voice boomed from the armored Kurama, calm and resonant. You and I are more than enough for this. He raised a hand to his head, focusing his chakra not on an attack, but on a connection. His consciousness shot across the village, a spear of pure thought. Inoki-san. Patch me through to my family. Now. In their respective Susanus, Fugaku, Itachi, and Sasuke all flinched as Naruto's voice echoed in their minds, a testament to the Yamanaka clan's speed. Tobi is the priority, Naruto commanded, his mental voice a fusion of a son's plea and a commander's order. Black Zetsu is the true mastermind, the one pulling the strings. I felt it when he revived Madara. Find him. End him. That is your mission. Madara is mine. There was a moment of silent, familial protest, but the logic was undeniable. The final battle for the Uchiha had to be fought by the Uchiha. Tsunade and Jiraiya, sensing the shift, moved to support them, their own battle with Nagato having prepared them for a Rinnegan user's reality warping abilities. Naruto turned his full, undivided attention back to his ancestor. Fighting a Rinnegan user is a real pain, he said, his voice laced with a newfound confidence. But I have something special for an old fossil like you. The crimson armor of the Susanoo around Kurama began to shift. Naruto formed a single seal. Sage Art, Clone Manifestation. A perfect, stable clone of Naruto, already glowing with the golden aura of Fox Sage Mode, appeared and sat cross-legged on Kurama's head. Its sole purpose, to maintain the Susanoo, freeing the original. With the reanimations gone, Naruto could finally dispel the thousands of clones scattered across the village, the immense flood of his chakra returning to him in a single, roaring torrent. He focused it all, pouring every last drop into his own transformation. His body was engulfed in a blinding, golden flame. The red pigmentation of his normal sage mode was burned away, replaced by a sleek, perfect fusion. His skin glowed with an inner light, and the whisker marks on his cheeks became sharp, elegant seals. This was his perfect fox sage mode, a state of absolute harmony between himself, Kurama, and the natural world. The armored Kurama, now piloted by the clone, held Madara Susanoo in a brutal lock of blades. The original Naruto, a living meteorite of golden energy, leapt from the avatar's shoulder. His speed was no longer just a flash, it was a concept. He was a beam of pure light, a golden arrow that shot across the crater with an impossible velocity. His hand was outstretched, his fingers wreathed in the silver, shimmering claws of a perfected sage, claws that could rend any defense. He aimed not for Madara's avatar, but for the man himself, a golden spear aimed at the heart of a god. He carved through the Susanoo's dense, divine chakra like a hot knife through butter, the ethereal armor offering no resistance. Madara's Rinnegan eyes widened in genuine, utter shock. He had no time to counter, no time to dodge. He could only do one thing. He held up his left hand, the Rinnegan in its palm flaring as he activated its ultimate defensive ability. Pretapath. Naruto's sage-clawed hand slammed into Madara's outstretched palm. The impact was not an explosion. It was an implosion. Madara's Rinnegan desperately tried to absorb the infinite, untamed nature energy of Naruto's attack. But it was like trying to drink a tsunami through a straw. The vessel could not contain the power. Madara screamed, a raw, agonized sound of pure, disbelieving pain. His entire left arm, from the fingertips to the shoulder, was overwhelmed. It didn't just disintegrate, it was erased from existence, consumed by a power that it could not absorb and could not withstand. The force of the impact sent Madara hurtling backward, his perfect Susanoo flickering and dying as its master was grievously wounded. He crashed into the far wall of the crater, his remaining arm clutching the stump of his shoulder, his face a mask of fury and utter disbelief. He had been wounded. Truly, physically wounded, in his own living body, for the first time in over a century. And it had been done by his own blood. Madara looked up, his Rinnegan blazing with a new, terrifying light. The pain seemed to fuel him, the shock giving way to a feral, ecstatic grin. Yes, he roared, his voice a triumphant bellow that shook the heavens. This is it. This is the feeling I have missed. The thrill of a true battle. You have surpassed all my expectations, boy. You are truly my heir. He rose to his feet, black receiver rods already beginning to protrude from his wounds, a desperate attempt to stabilize his body. The fight was far from over. While the god of the Uchiha was being humbled, the hunt for the creator of his misery was underway. Naruto's mental command had been clear, a strategist's final, critical move in a war of gods and monsters. Black Zetsu is the true mastermind. Find him. End him. Tsunade, Jiraiya, Fugaku, Itachi, and Sasuke moved as one, a five-man cell of such immense power the world had never seen its equal. They were a storm of Sannin and Uchiha, streaking across the ravaged village. His chakra signature is parasitic, almost non-existent, Jiraiya said, his own sage senses spread thin. He is a master of concealment. He is not a creature of chakra, Itachi corrected, his voice calm and analytical as he leapt between ruined rooftops. He is a manifestation of will. Do not look for a shinobi. Look for a shadow that does not belong. It was Sasuke who found him. His Mangekyo, honed by years of hunting in the dark, saw not a chakra signature, but a distortion. A patch of shadow in the Uchiha compound, near the Naka shrine, that was too dark, too absolute. There, Sasuke commanded. The five of them landed, surrounding the unnatural shadow. Black Zetsu rose from the ground, not like a shinobi, but like a spill of ink, his form coalescing, his single yellow eye filled with a cold, ancient amusement. So, the puppets have come to cut their strings. Zetsu's voice was a dry, rasping whisper of leaves and dust. It is impressive you figured it out. It took your ancestors centuries to dance to my tune without ever realizing I was the composer. He looked at the three Uchiha, a creator admiring his flawed masterpieces. Indra's transmigrants. So full of passion. So easy to twist. Your entire clan's history, your precious curse of hatred. It was all my work. A story I wrote to ensure my mother's return. Your story ends today, Fugaku snarled, his Susanoo flaring to life. Zetsu just laughed, a sound like grinding stone. You cannot kill a thought. You cannot kill an idea. I am eternal. I am the will of Kaguya. He sank into the ground, his form becoming intangible, ready to escape and continue his work for another millennium. But he was facing Itachi Uchiha. Itachi's crimson Susanoo erupted, but he didn't draw its katana. Instead, from its side, it held a shimmering, ethereal gourd. The sword of Totsuka. You are not an idea, Itachi said, his voice a quiet finality as he stepped forward. You are a poison. And we are the cure. The Susanoo's hand shot forward, the spirit blade moving with a speed that was not of the physical world. It didn't try to cut Zetsu, it simply pierced the shadow he was sinking into. Zetsu's mocking laughter turned into a shriek of pure, disbelieving terror. He was not being cut, he was being sealed. The ethereal blade was a cage of unbreakable genjutsu, a prison for the soul. No. My mother. I must. His voice was cut off as the last of his black, inky form was absorbed into the blade, drawn into a pocket dimension of eternal, dreamless, timeless slumber. He would not be killed. He would be trapped, alone with his thoughts, for the rest of eternity. It was over. The will that had manipulated their clan for 1,000 years, the source of all their pain, was gone. Fugaku, Sasuke, and Itachi stood in the quiet of their ancestral home, the three of them letting their Susanuos fade. The curse that had defined their lives had finally been broken. A moment of quiet, profound peace settled over them. And then, the entire world shook. A tremor so violent it felt as if the planet itself had been struck. They all looked towards the crater, where the battle between Naruto and Madara had just reached a new, terrifying crescendo. Their work was not yet done. 5 of the strongest shinobi in Konoha streaked across the sky, their enhanced speeds a blur of color and power. They arrived at the edge of the crater to a scene of almost unimaginable destruction. The armored Kurama was gone. In its place stood the Nine Tails itself, Naruto a small, golden figure on its head. And facing them, Uchiha Madara stood, alive and whole, a son of pure, unrestrained power. The earth around him was a writhing forest of colossal, thrashing wooden tentacles, the legendary wood style of the first Hokage. Madara's Rinnegan eyes fell upon the new arrivals, a slow, arrogant grin spreading across his face. Excellent. The whole family has arrived, just in time to witness the end of Hashirama's foolish dream. He didn't just control the wood, he was the wood. A massive, 50-foot-tall dragon with a snarling face erupted from the ground, its body a cage of interlacing branches, and slammed into Kurama. The two titans grappled, Baijuwu against wood style, a primal battle of ancient power. Naruto. Fugaku's voice boomed from his Susanoo. Fall back. We will face him together. No. Naruto's voice echoed back, filled with a strange, calm finality. This is my fight. He is my blood. My responsibility. He looked down at Madara, his golden sage eyes holding no hatred, only a profound, sorrowful resolve. He and his ancestor were two sides of the same coin, two men gifted with the same impossible power, who had chosen two different paths. Kit, what are you doing? Kurama's voice roared in his mind as he was ensnared by the wood dragon. His power is endless. He is connected to the Geto statue. We cannot win a battle of attrition. Then we won't fight a battle of attrition, Naruto sent back, his focus absolute. We'll end it. In one, single blow. He raised his hands, and the world seemed to hold its breath. He began gathering nature energy, not just from the air, but from the very life force of the planet. The ground around the crater began to wither, the trees turning gray as he drew upon a quantity of sage chakra that was beyond all reason. The golden aura around him became a blinding, incandescent sun. On Kurama's back, 9 colossal Rasen shurikens, each one a shrieking vortex of wind and nature energy, formed above each of the fox's lashing tails. At the same time, in Kurama's maw, a tailed beast bomb of such immense size and density that it seemed to warp the very light around it swirled to life. Madara's eyes widened, a flicker of genuine shock in his Rinnegan. He recognized the sheer, world-ending scale of the power being gathered. He raised his own hand to the sky. You think you can erase me? I am this world's salvation. From the heavens, a new shadow fell. Not one meteorite, but a dozen, a swarm of colossal spheres of rock pulled from the heavens by his divine power, each one a promise of planetary extinction. He was going to meet Naruto's ultimate attack with his own. Fugaku, Itachi, Sasuke, Tsunade, and Jiraiya could only watch in horrified awe. This was no longer a battle of shinobi. It was a clash of forces that could unmake the world. Naruto, his form a blazing star of pure power, stood on Kurama's head, his 9-tailed beast Rasen shuriken spinning, his final, ultimate attack ready to be unleashed. This is the end, Madara. Naruto's voice was a quiet, final judgment that cut through the roar of the descending heavens. For your dream, and for mine. The two attacks, one born of the planet and one born to destroy it, were about to collide. The final moment had arrived. Time seemed to stretch, to warp. For the 5 legendary shinobi watching from the crater's edge, the world became a silent, slow-motion tapestry of annihilation. They saw the dozen mountain-sized meteorites descending like the tears of a wrathful god. They saw the 9 shrieking vortexes of wind and the single, impossibly dense sphere of Baijuwu chakra rising to meet them like a defiant scream. But in the heart of the storm, Naruto was moving. While his ultimate jutsu raced towards the heavens, the golden aura around his physical body blazed, reaching a new, impossible peak. This was the final gamble. The ultimate distraction. He leapt from Kurama's head. He was no longer just a flash of gold. He was a comet, a living spear of pure, condensed nature energy, aimed not at the sky, but at the man who had called down the apocalypse. Madara saw him coming. His Rinnegan, for all its divine power, could only watch as the golden streak crossed the miles of shattered earth in less than a heartbeat. He tried to raise the wood dragon to intercept, to form a wall, but he was too slow. Naruto was faster than thought, faster than a god's reaction time. Naruto's hand was outstretched, his fingers wreathed in the shimmering, silver claws of his perfected fox sage mode. This was not a jutsu. It was the purest application of his power, a single, perfect strike containing the entirety of his will, his grief, and his unshakable belief in the dream of his predecessors. He struck Madara's physical body, still standing proudly on the head of its wood dragon. There was no sound. There was no explosion. There was only light. A silent, incandescent, and utterly absolute white light that consumed Madara completely. The wood-style dragon, its master's chakra severed, crumbled into a shower of dead splinters. The meteorites in the sky, their summoner gone, lost their momentum and dissolved into a harmless rain of dust and pebbles. Naruto's own colossal attacks, their target vanished, flew harmlessly into the upper atmosphere and detonated against the cold, dead canvas of space. When the light faded, Naruto stood where Madara had been, his golden aura slowly receding. All that remained of the legendary Uchiha Madara was a faint, fading wisp of chakra and a handful of dust turning on the wind. But in that final, silent moment of impact, Naruto had seen it. Through the blinding light, he had seen the look on his ancestor's face. It was not fear. It was not rage. It was a smile. A genuine, almost peaceful smile of profound satisfaction. And he had heard the last words Madara ever spoke, not with his ears, but whispered directly into his soul. "You are a worthy heir." Silence descended upon the crater. The war was over. The echoes of a battle that had unmade the world faded into the quiet hum of the wind. The silence that descended upon the crater was absolute. The war was over. The echoes of a battle that had unmade the world faded into nothing. From the crater's edge, the five legends could only stare. The sheer, godlike power they had just witnessed had left them breathless. Fugaku, Itachi, and Sasuke felt the last, lingering wisp of Madara's chakra, their ancestor, their curse, finally, truly, vanish from the world. It was a release, a severing of a chain that had bound their clan for a century. Jiraiya let out a slow, shaky breath. He did it. Naruto stood alone in the center of the devastation, a lone, golden figure. The brilliant aura of his perfect fox sage mode flickered, sputtered, and then died, leaving him standing there in his simple black combat gear. The borrowed, infinite energy of the planet receded, and the true, finite cost of the battle came crashing down on him like a physical weight. His legs buckled. The world swam, his vision tunneling into a pinpoint of darkness. He saw the blurry shapes of his family and his mentors racing towards him, and then, for the first time in a long, long time, Naruto Uchiha knew no more. Chapter 14. Epilogue. He woke to the gentle scent of clean linen and antiseptic herbs. The first thing he registered was the quiet. Not the tense, waiting silence of a battlefield, but a peaceful, rhythmic quiet punctuated by the distant, steady sound of hammers striking wood. He blinked, his eyes slowly focusing. The world was sharp, clear, and beautiful. He was in a large, pristine medical tent, the morning sun filtering softly through the canvas. He felt whole. Rested. He sat up, his body feeling surprisingly light, his chakra coils full and calm. He looked out the open flap of the tent. Where a colossal crater had been, there was now a bustling, vibrant worksite. Thousands of people, shinobi and civilians alike, were working together. He saw wood-style jutsu being used by Yamato to raise the frames of new buildings, a testament to the first Hokage's legacy being used to heal, not destroy. The people of Konoha, their spirits unbroken, were rebuilding their home from the ground up, their laughter and chatter a symphony of resilience. A soft groan from the bed next to him drew his attention. Naruto turned, and his heart seemed to stop. Lying there, looking pale but peaceful, was Itachi. His older brother was not in his Akatsuki cloak, but in simple, clean hospital robes. Naruto was out of bed in an instant, his movements silent as he crossed the space between them. He stood over his brother, his eyes wide with 1,000 unspoken questions. Just as he was about to reach out, the tent flap opened. Tsunade walked in, a clipboard in her hand, a rare, gentle smile on her face. "I'd appreciate it if you didn't wake my most difficult patient," she said, her voice a soft, teasing murmur. "He needs his rest." Naruto's head snapped towards her, his voice a desperate whisper. "Itachi? What's wrong with him? Is he going to be okay?" Tsunade's smile widened. She walked to Itachi's bedside, her hand glowing with a soft, diagnostic green as she checked the readings on a monitor. "When we brought him in after the battle, he was running on fumes. For years, he'd been fighting a war on two fronts. One against the Akatsuki, and another, secret one, inside his own body." She looked at Naruto, her expression turning serious. He had a severe chakra cancer. A degenerative disease that was slowly eating away at his chakra network, causing immense pain and leading to organ failure. It was the reason he was going blind much faster. The reason he was dying. Naruto's blood ran cold. He remembered the bloody tears, the weary sadness in his brother's eyes. It hadn't just been the weight of his sins. He had been dying. Naruto's eyes filled with a fresh wave of grief. Was? He caught the word, his heart seizing on the past tense. He had eat? Tsunade looked from the sleeping, peaceful face of Itachi to the hopeful, questioning face of Naruto. She puffed out her chest, and her gentle smile was replaced by a look of pure, unadulterated, and utterly earned arrogance. Of course he had it, she declared, her voice ringing with triumphant pride. I'm not the greatest medical nin in the world for nothing. Naruto stared at her, the pieces clicking into place with a dawning, brilliant hope. You cured him? Cured is a strong word, Tsunade corrected, though her proud smirk didn't falter. His chakra network was too badly damaged to be fully repaired. So I didn't repair it. I rebuilt it. She explained the procedure, her voice a whirlwind of complex medical terminology that Naruto only barely followed. She had used his own Uzumaki cells, harvested from a blood sample, as a base. Infusing them with Kurama's potent, life-giving chakra and her own precise medical ninjutsu, she had essentially created a biological scaffolding, a new set of chakra pathways that she had painstakingly integrated into Itachi's system, bypassing the cancerous, failing ones. It was the most complex operation of my life, she admitted, a hint of the strain she'd been under showing in her eyes. A single mistake and I could have turned him into a vegetable. But, she added, her arrogant grin returning, I don't make mistakes. She looked down at Itachi's sleeping form. He's weak. His body will need months, maybe even a year, of physical therapy to fully recover. But the disease is gone. The cancer is in remission. He's going to live. The words, he's going to live, were the most beautiful sound Naruto had ever heard. The weight of a decade of guilt, of grief, of a mission he thought was impossible, lifted from his shoulders in a single, glorious instant. Itachi was home. And he was safe. Just then, the tent flap opened again. Fugaku and Mikoto entered, their faces etched with a weary relief. They were followed by Sasuke, who stopped in the doorway, his eyes locking onto his older brother's sleeping form. The cold, hard mask of the warrior he had become crumbled away, replaced by the simple, profound relief of a boy who had gotten his family back. They stood there for a long moment, a family reforged in the fires of an impossible war, the silence of the medical tent a more profound celebration than any parade. Naruto looked from his sleeping older brother to his stoic younger one. He looked at his parents, their hands clasped together. He looked at Tsunade, the woman who had performed a miracle. The war was over. The curses that had haunted their family, Madara's ambition, Zetsu's manipulations, Itachi's illness, were all broken. He was tired. A deep, bone-weary exhaustion that went beyond chakra and into his very soul. He had fought gods, saved the world, and seen his brother brought back from the brink of death. He walked back to his own bed, the sounds of his family's quiet, joyful reunion a gentle lullaby. He had done enough. He lay down, pulled the clean, white sheet up to his chin, and for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, Naruto Uchiha went to sleep with a smile on his face, his heart full and his world, finally, at peace. 1 year later. The year of peace was a year of healing. Konoha, scarred but not broken, was rebuilt with a speed and efficiency that spoke of its unbreakable will. The alliance with the sand, mist, and eventually, a humbled cloud and stone, held firm, a new era of cooperation dawning on a continent weary of war. In the Hokage's office, Tsunade looked at the three men standing before her. A year of dedicated physical therapy and her own medical genius had worked wonders. Itachi Uchiha stood tall, the weary, haunted look in his eyes replaced by a quiet, steady calm. The only remnant of his past ordeal was his left eye, which remained a dull, sightless gray, the permanent price of using Izanami to save the world from Kabuto. But his right eye, his mangekyo, was as sharp as ever. Beside him, Naruto and Sasuke stood as two sides of the same perfect coin, their power a calm, thrumming presence in the room. Tsunade looked at them, a grim, final satisfaction on her face. It's time, she said, her voice a low, serious command. Our sensors have been tracking him for months. A trail of disruptions, of whispers in the dark. We have a confirmed location. She unrolled a map, pointing to a desolate, uninhabited chain of islands far off the coast of the land of water. Obito. He's there. Hiding. Biding his time. She looked at Itachi, a question in her eyes. I waited until you were ready. I figured this was a mission you'd want to be a part of. A faint, dangerous smile touched Itachi's lips. You figured correctly, Lady Hokage. Tsunade's gaze fell upon the three of them, Konoha's true Alpha Strike team, a force of nature that the world had never before seen. I don't care how you do it, she said, her voice ringing with the absolute authority of the fifth Hokage. I don't care what it takes. The three of you will go to those islands. You will find Uchiha Obito. And you will erase his existence from this world. The command was given. The final hunt had begun. There was no grand departure. The three Uchiha brothers simply vanished from the Hokage's office, leaving Tsunade alone with the map and the heavy weight of her decision. They reappeared moments later at the coast of the Land of Fire, the salty spray of the sea misting their faces. They moved across the water, three phantoms of impossible speed. Naruto took the lead, his sage sense a perfect, all-seeing radar that scanned the vast, empty ocean for hundreds of miles. Sasuke and Itachi flanked him, their Mangekyo Sharingan cutting through the mist, their presence a silent, coordinated dance of deadly intent. They were a single, perfect weapon. A three-pronged spear of Uchiha power, aimed at the heart of the last lingering shadow of their clan's tormented past. They found the islands after a day of relentless travel. It was a desolate, forgotten place, a chain of black, volcanic rock that clawed its way out of a perpetually gray sea. The air was thick with the smell of sulfur and the lonely cry of gulls. It was a place where things came to die. He's here, Naruto said, his voice a low murmur against the wind. His sage sense had found it, a single, faint, and desperately lonely chakra signature, hidden deep within a cave system on the largest island. It felt weak. A flickering candle in a hurricane. They landed silently on a black sand beach, their footsteps making no sound. They moved inland, a trio of ghosts navigating the sharp, unforgiving terrain. There were no traps, no alarms. Only the profound, waiting silence of a tomb. They found the cave entrance hidden behind a curtain of dying, salt-crusted vines. They entered without hesitation. The air inside was cold and damp. In the center of the cavern, sitting on a simple, rough-hewn stone, was Uchiha Obito. The orange mask was gone, discarded on the floor beside him. He wasn't wearing his Akatsuki cloak. He was just a man, clad in simple black robes. The right side of his face was a grotesque ruin of scarred, white flesh. His single remaining Mangekyo Sharingan looked up at them, and it held no malice, no grand ambition. Only a deep, profound, and soul-crushing weariness. He was a shell, a man hollowed out by a dream that had turned to ash. The loss of Madara, Zetsu, and the Baiju hadn't just defeated him, it had broken him. So, Obito's voice was a dry, rasping thing, a faint echo of its former power. The Reapers have come for the ghost. Sasuke's hand tightened on the hilt of his Kusanagi, his Mangekyo blazing with a cold, righteous fury. You have much to answer for. Obito just chuckled, a pathetic, airy sound. I have nothing left to say. My world. It died a long time ago. In front of a cave, in another war. He looked at them, three specters of a future he had tried to prevent. Do it. End it. He stood, and for a moment, a flicker of his old power returned. He raised a hand, intending to use his Kamui, perhaps to escape, perhaps for one last, suicidal attack. He never got the chance. Naruto's eternal Mangekyo, the perfect fusion of Uchiha and Namikaze, blazed to life. But it was his left eye that focused, the eye that held the other half of Obito's power. No, Naruto said, his voice a quiet, absolute finality. You don't get to run away this time. As Obito tried to become intangible, Naruto's own Kamui activated. He didn't target Obito's body, he targeted the space within Obito's body. The two linked pocket dimensions created a catastrophic interference. Obito cried out, not in pain, but in shock, as his own jutsu was completely and utterly neutralized, his intangibility cancelled out by its perfect counter. He was trapped, a ghost forcibly held in the mortal world. In that instant of vulnerability, Sasuke moved. He was a blur of amethyst lightning, his Susanoo-clad fist striking not to kill, but to shatter, breaking Obito's legs and pinning him to the cavern floor. The final judgment was left to Itachi. He walked forward, his own crimson Susanoo flaring to life. He looked down at the broken man who had been his mentor, his manipulator, and the architect of his entire life of pain. He saw not a monster, but a boy who had lost his way in the dark. From the Susanoo's side, the ethereal, shimmering gourd of sealing emerged, the sword of Totsuka in its hand. Your war is over, Obito, Itachi said, his voice a quiet, almost gentle thing. It was an absolution. A final act of mercy. The spirit blade descended, piercing Obito's chest. He did not scream. He simply looked up, his single Mangekyo eye seeming to see something far away, a memory of a girl with brown hair and a kind smile. A faint, peaceful look settled on his ruined face as the blade absorbed him, sealing his soul away into an eternal, dreamless peace. The last ghost of the Uchiha was gone. The three brothers stood in the silent cavern, the weight of a generation of pain finally, truly, lifted from their shoulders. Itachi, his mission of a lifetime complete, let his Susanoo fade. A single, silent tear of blood traced a path from his sightless left eye, a final, physical toll for a war he had won. Sasuke looked at his older brother, the hatred that had fueled him for so long gone, replaced by a deep, quiet understanding. Naruto walked to them, placing a hand on each of their shoulders. The war was over. Their family was whole. Their world was safe. He looked out the mouth of the cave at the sun, just beginning to break through the gray clouds, casting a brilliant, hopeful light across the sea. "Come on," he said, a weary but genuine smile on his face. "Let's go celebrate." Itachi and Sasuke looked at each other, then back at Naruto, and for the first time in over a decade, they shared a look of simple, uncomplicated brotherhood. They chuckled, the sound echoing in the quiet cavern, a release of all the pain and sorrow they had carried. They found themselves in the land of hot springs, a vibrant, bustling town filled with the scent of sulfur and the sound of laughter. It was a place of healing and relaxation, a world away from the shadows they had just left behind. They had shed their combat gear, opting for simple, comfortable yukatas. For the first time, they weren't shinobi on a mission, they were just three brothers on a much-needed, impromptu vacation. As they walked through the town's main street, taking in the sights, Naruto's sage sense picked up three vibrant, cheerful chakra signatures from an open-air dengo shop. He slowed, his gaze drifting over. Three beautiful women, kunoichi by their posture but clearly off-duty, were laughing and enjoying the evening. Naruto sighed at his two brothers, a mischievous glint in his eternal mangekyo. Sasuke caught the look and followed his gaze, a single, analytical eyebrow raised. Itachi, seeing both his brothers' expressions, let out a soft, almost imperceptible sigh of fond exasperation. Sasuke looked back at Naruto, the corner of his mouth twitching upwards into a smirk. "Three-man?" he asked, the old Uchiha mission terminology for a three-person team feeling perfectly, ridiculously appropriate. Naruto and Itachi looked at each other and chuckled, the sound light and free. "Let's go," Naruto said, his grin a flash of pure, unadulterated charm. "Alright guys, that's it for this one. If you enjoyed it, please feel free to leave a like and subscribe. Once again, huge thanks to all of my Patreons. Making these videos would be impossible without you guys' support, and I'm extremely grateful for all the love and engagement you guys keep showing. Anyways y'all, have a wonderful day, and until next time, peace.